Were you still working on? You're gonna have for next year? As far as commissioner. Yeah, I figured.
I haven't heard anybody express desires to change.
Yeah. Was not necessarily. Okay.
But yeah, it'll be good.
Lots of the pictures, and we were going to run a photo page, but then we ran out of space.
Oh,
And so now the thought is perhaps we'll run a photo page next week.
Yeah.
would be perfect time. Is because you can promote
Advertise Santa.
Santa. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, look. Did you hear really of that?
There's so many events this Saturday.
Oh, you tell me about it. My schedule starts at 6 o'clock in the morning.
No, sorry, go. Two things, one thing done.
Okay. And then the 13th, we also have Shop with the Hero too. Got that information? Well, maybe I should send that to you.
Okay.
Did you get my message?
You should sign in.
I've never signed in, so I don't look at it.
Yeah. I can't sign in. I can't take pictures.
You did. Yeah, that's what flag.
Yeah.
She sent it out on the 30th or something.
Budget. Yes. Make it nice for us.
Today, the only one that,
That's okay. I thought you were faster than.
it's talking about. Say there or not. We're looking at any $0.00. I have this somewhere.
That's okay. You must have got it.
Yeah.
Another year or two, I'll have my password down. Forget to change it.
Oh, you have to pay the one for that.
They'll change it. They'll change it.
Sure, you always sit by me so she can help you.
On the news last night, they were saying that the top 3 passwords are like admin and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what was this?
Password.
And password.
I just.
Forgot my password.
Yeah, just saw it this morning.
Wow. At least I put like a number in there.
Password 1.
Yes.
I usually put the number between pass and word.
There you go.
Pass 2 words.
That'll trick them.
Yeah.
There you go.
They said those of us that think we have a really secure password are probably wrong.
Good, I'll just write that ready to go, Michael.
Yep. Does he got 2 books for it?
Right, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call the work session to order. Everyone would like to silence their cell phones and stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the topic this morning is reviewing the budget for 26.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Something that I'll give at the beginning of this is if there are any particular things you want to click on, feel free to interject, interrupt, and it can be as much of a roundtable conversation as you'd like it to be. That said, the whole point, of course, is seen on the agenda is just to talk about what has transpired or changed over the last couple of months. And for the most part, the answer to that question is not a lot. But you have two spreadsheets in front of you. Who else needed them? There's more on the copies on the podium up there or at the door. But really, it looks at where were we on September 16th when that preliminary levy certification happened versus today, December 2nd, and in advance of where the county would likely be 2 weeks from today. And I don't anticipate anything changing from what you see today to December 16th. So I wanted to give you some time ahead of that date to pose any questions or concerns or point staff a direction that you see fit to work through some additional measures. Looking at the updated sheet, so the sheet that says final numbers as of 12/2/2025, just kind of explaining the logic behind this. If you see a highlighted cell in yellow, something has changed between the first version dated 9/16/2025 and today. There is one cell you'll notice that is highlighted as black. That is an outstanding question for myself to pose to you in the appropriations area. Come back to that, but just as a grand scale, just interpretive measure that's highlighted yellow, there is something that has changed. In almost all cases, I should say, they're finalizations of human resource specific implications, be it grade adjustments themselves, be updated numbers after actual benefits have been selected. Maybe I had family insurance last year and I selected single this year, for example, which we saw a little bit of shift in that conversation because the benefit for a single individual is greater than a family individual in terms of what contributions are there for a health savings account. So in some cases, if individuals have a spouse that also has insurance or the ability to be insured, we saw some shifts away from family to single health. So overall, in shifting of dollars in excess of a little more than $100,000 plus and minus all over the place in combination to all of those accounts. As you can see, the bottom line figure has not changed. I still am recommending a 3% operational increase from this year going into 2026. I still think that that will best create a stair-step scenario over the next several years that we will be looking at, especially as we get closer and closer to talking about potential bond scenarios. So that recommendation hasn't changed. Really, the end of the day, I was really clear about communicating this the last time we talked and going into the preliminary levy certification as far as how do we get to this number, what dollars are being used to buy down to get to this number, talking about the reality of we're using about $2 million of surplus funds. And when I say surplus funds, those meet many different designations and categories. A lot of those are assigned, or we have the ability to more generally use them or apply them. Others are very structured, and the eligibility requirements for them are much more narrow. But there's a large combination of both of those going into the bottom line number. So you can see that reserve balance used down at the bottom right-hand corner of that spreadsheet that is in front of you. And again, as a reminder, any of those individual cells at the department level that are green are indicating that there are reserve balances being used in some individual form.
Michael, are we using reserve funds on the library to bring that down?
We're not.
So not the county funds, but the library's reserve funds that they don't have assigned, or I forget the word that was used for that they're supposed to be.
So the library, and this is going to be a parking point too, and now is as good as any. So you see the reduction of $29,000 from preliminary to now. That in and of itself, that reduction is just because of the conversation saying that we're going to be levy neutral going into 2026. Nothing else. So there aren't any reserve dollars reflected on that at all. That is still a conversation that can probably will happen, but it's kind of a weird thing and a weird timing because there's a relationship with Waseca County as well too. It's not just Waseca County making that decision to use those reserve dollars, but they're there. And we will have essentially taken them on as a result of absorbing library services and operations. So there's some discretionary authority there, but it's a shared discretionary authority between us and Waseca County as well. Undoubtedly, there will be a number of conversations happening surrounding libraries in the next few months. I'm confident of that. And I think some of those decisions can still be made mid-year if those joint boards are in favor of doing so. So even aiming at this, the 560 amount going into 2026 is not committing to not being able to use additional reserve dollars to buy that down. But that is simply reflecting, we don't want to see an increase from 2025 to 2026. So it is just a flat portion of the levy. If you look at that spreadsheet that we look at here. This is what we looked at going into preliminary levy certification. This is the preliminary apportionment rate that Stacy had provided. It's actually slightly different. So when you recalculate the net tax capacity based formula, 42.6 would be Waseca County's apportionment share for 2026. So that is where that 563 number comes from. The 563 number is that 42.6 on the 2025 budgetary amount. So again, just flat budget, flat levy implication for library services going into 2026. No increase there. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Other questions on library, concerns, feelings, one way or the other? That's what I'm at now.
I know that as soon as we can get to it in the new year to begin the conversations and get educated with our school partners, the library administration and board are concerned that, you know, times of uncertainty can lead to discomfort with the staff and, you know, all the normal things that come with organizational change. So
Absolutely.
They're looking forward to beginning conversations and helping us understand where the library fits in our mission and what they do and how they compare with other libraries across the state and all those conversations.
Great.
Stacy is preparing for them.
Yeah, and in that vein, what you see on the screen are a list of operational questions. This is kind of the next step as we get together with Stacy and just trying to forge our own understanding. This is mostly Joe Martin and myself going back and forth, like what are the things we actually need to know to make some cogent thoughts and conclusions in those next steps, not wanting to be arbitrary, not just saying, well, this is the number we like to see, but actually understanding what the operation and the implications of the operation as we go forward. So just, you know, some of the more practical measures. How is the library service, or at that point in time, that regional library system doing business? What are you doing business as in terms of Secretary of State's eyes and some of those more legal precedential pieces, financial management pieces, all of these for you, obviously, but just again, understanding the operational flow. A lot of the big pieces are the payroll and the personnel pieces. This will be maybe the biggest conversation, certainly the biggest implication to the existing staff, but also our own management of staff. There isn't really anything in the bylaws as they exist to govern this or really speak to how staff are hired. It is very uncommon, and both Joe and I have had many conversations with other counties in our area and abroad of how are you doing this? Whose staff are they? And by that, I mean between cities and counties, because again, the theme is very clear and consistent that this does not happen the same way anywhere twice. But the one thing that we can readily conclude and draw is that nowhere else are they independent kind of employees of a joint powers of agreement of sorts. In every other instance, they are either county or city employees. That's the one conclusion we can kind of draw, is that we're very unique in that piece, that regard, at least. But that's really it in terms of cost and operation. How many actual branches? When are you open? What's the relationship with your regional library system on the state level? That all happens very differently in different places. So a lot of things to work through there with Stacy first, I think, before we come back to the larger board level. So we are trying to avoid the situation where we just get a bunch of people in a room and okay, what do we do? Trying to be a little bit more pointed and focused in those conversations as we move forward.
Did you give her a timeline to get some of this stuff back to you? Or?
It's not got a timeline yet. No. The first thing we want to do is we're trying not to like put people on the spot and feel like this is some sort of interrogation, because it's not. We're truly just trying to get her first to understand what do we need to understand. Because we still want to advocate for the services that are happening. They're doing important things, and we don't want to diminish that and, like I said, be arbitrary with some of the thoughts and conclusions that we come to there.
Well, I understand. I just don't want to be dragged out. Here we are sitting next year at this time discussing.
Oh, correct.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
I think there's a lot of motivation to come to a conclusion. But sort of fair.
I do have a question about the list. Because I do appreciate it, and I don't need to like review the whole thing, but you know, I always like to kind of back things up way away and take a look at the whole thing. And as I looked down the list that you scrolled for us, I saw a lot of things that went, oh yeah. There wasn't a thing up there that I didn't think, yep, we are really gonna have to have that in front of us. I think there's, and you know, just philosophically, I think there are a couple of things that we are going to have to, while we absolutely have to do all those practical pieces too, we have to consider the philosophical pieces here. What do we understand the mission of the libraries to be? What services do they provide? What relationships do we have with each of the cities that have a library? Their skin in the game, as far as, you know, somehow quantifying, because I mean, roughly speaking, the city provides the building. And then the library provides the collection and quite often the furnishings. But I think clarity on some of those pieces, because obviously when we get done, we want to, we want the cities to be partners in this too.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking about, you know, obviously we have the major piece in this, but that other partnership with cities, I think, is going to be, and I know there's some concern on the library board that some cities are not very supportive of their libraries.
Yeah, all good things, all good points. So back to those conversations that Joe and I were having with some of our partners across county borders. Certainly that is a huge piece of the conversation. And a huge implication or driver of cost as well. So locally, and Tammy and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2012, where the state of Waseca stopped levying for library services themselves. Effectively turned that over to the county, but at a point in time, the city was levying for library services, contributing on a fiscal basis, I guess you could say, more than just the site and location, which we are still paying a lease amount for.
For the office piece.
For the office pieces, thanks. Yeah. So there's a relationship, but it isn't really a formal one or a documented one anywhere with any of our cities at all. And that's been something that's revisited by Joe and myself as well. You look at a Brown County, a Nicollet County, in those instances, just as quick examples, in the St. Peter, the city has complete ownership of the library and the library services, complete cost ownership, complete employment ownership. In other counties, essentially, it's here's the dollar amount, here's how many staff that dollar amount supports. If the city would like to expand those operational services, hire another FTE, they can do that, and they do that. So it's just a lot of different structures and a lot of different arrangements that are presently happening with our library services, which doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. It means we're doing it differently. And now knowing that we have to do it even more differently than we thought going forward, it just begs all of these questions to revisit and review. So I did forward you this list. If you think of other things, please fire them back and we'll include them that are important to you and your purview. But
What did you say about St. Peter? The city runs it all?
yes.
Yeah.
So when we think of the per capita costs, we looked at that spreadsheet and put together 40 some odd counties of what's your minimum certification by Department of Education versus what you're actually budgeting. How does that help us drive in the decision-making process? And it really doesn't. It just shows further the disparity of how this happens operationally across the state. But it helps in the sense that it shows the disparity, even more so from the Seward County standpoint of how much they're spending versus how much is required by the state, but also just on per capita basis and total dollar amount. They're a clear outlier there. And a lot of that we would have to conclude is because of the lack of participation from the city standpoint in terms of budgets. And, there's number of sites, number of staff is driven by number of sites. All of that will be relevant to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to need to understand the what services our libraries provide compared to other counties to it. I mean, I think about rural counties and more urban counties or counties that have larger cities. They have, I mean, obviously here in Waseca, almost half the county population is in the city of Waseca, close to the library. But if you don't have the Waldorf Library, there's not many people around there, but the Waldorf Library is all there is down there. There's not a school library. And their library is the least of all the libraries as far as what they have available, and the hours are open, but at least there is an option for a library there, where the school doesn't even provide one because there's no school there anymore. So I think those things I'll be interested to have these conversations and learn more and hear more.
Good. Anything else on that for now? So going back to the spreadsheets, just position back over that first slide. So I think where I last left off, I was talking about the buy downs here, zooming in. So reserve balance is used in terms of that $2 million, and just running back through that list at the departmental level, as you see indicated, in terms of reminders, it's the same information you saw 2 months ago. The only one that has changed is down at the bottom of the list, which is the Improvement element. We'll talk about that in a second. Just Fund 1 being our general fund. And, obviously, there are a number of departments nested within the general fund. We know that there are significant amounts of information technology upgrades that are happening in 2026. We talked a lot about that essentially 5-year life cycle. Every 5 years, we're committed to some pretty significant costs when we get into our SANs and our other supporting hardware equipment. Not surprising. We knew that it was coming and planning for it. Planning and zoning, the last little bit of the LATCF dollars, that federal grant that was acquired was $150,000 grant, so it's just going to be some item costs. County sheriff, the typical public safety aid that comes through, which was more than was expected versus pool, and the transfer of the anticipated vehicle purchases. $12,000 for capital improvement, which is effectively just zeroing out that Fund 11 implication, as you can see on the spreadsheet in front of you as well. Public Works are road and bridge reserves, the 550, that's the seal coat operation. The $150,000 is interest earnings accrued in 2024 that are being transferred in 2025 or 2026 budget to replenish that equipment fund and provide ultimately some levy relief in the purchases there of a tandem truck trailer. And then human services. So this number started at 400,000 in preliminary. Back up to 371 of these things. So the difference is the final levy that was approved at the Mid-Prairie Joint Power Board level on the 18th of November. So we had about $140,000 increase at Mid-Prairie level for Waseca County's apportionate share from 2025 going into 2026. And then we restructured the rent agreement, as you recall, which was roughly $70,000 less in anticipated revenue, but also right-sized us with what Dodge and Steele County are doing. So all things we knew were coming again, but with how you see the shuffle of how those numbers equate to the actual scenario in front of you. So with the inclusion of the library, the only number that you see that reduced is this bottom line percentage. So effectually it did go down, but the operational portion did not. So what did go down is the library itself, which I mentioned. So the $29,600 and change reduction in the library operational services is the difference between the 6.3 to the 6.12. That you see with the inclusion of the library, that 3% is the 3% of the change. So as I said, I don't anticipate it changing or recommendation to change from my perspective.
Michael, why did IT go down again? Just curious if they cut something out that we may need, or it's just.
Oh no, I'm the $10,000 some dollars, right? You're talking
Yeah.
about? No, it was, and specifically, I don't know, but I know there's insurance changes, grade changes, benefits changes, but all.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't know if it was a big item or something.
No, nothing has changed in terms of the infrastructure cost or the capital cost, the asset costs.
Okay, appreciate that.
Can you, what is the main driver in planning and zoning increase this year?
Fuller.
Is that staff related or is that?
I noted as well over here. So in 2025, our current, it's weird. So I have $100,000 in here for 2025. That is the other portion of that LATCF money that I was mentioning. So when I originally hired Tina, and we talked about this a year and a half ago, part of the cell, if you will, at that point in time that we hired the community development coordinator was this $150,000 that essentially pays for any salary benefit allocation in 2025. So that essentially is just phased out in 2026 budget application. So it's not necessarily the increased cost, it is the decrease in the revenue placeholder that is in there. Which is right here, that line being transferred in. $50,000, as I mentioned, was the remainder of that LATCF on the spreadsheet we showed a moment ago as well. We do have an increase here from the restructuring of Mommy's job that we converted into a county planner. Again, that was anticipated and strategically the desire we wanted to do. And then we brought in the greens, not the greens cost. So we have a separate line in their account structure for economic development. I also consolidated what was happening in the economic development account under the umbrella of planning and zoning as well, just because that work is happening here. So where you see this $16,000, that was $2,000 in 2025. That was the consolidation of a lot of those economic development costs that I just brought under the House of Planning and Zoning. $2,000 appropriation is the Waseca County Farm and City function sponsorship. So the relationship we started last year for putting the county focused. That was the one I was trying to think of that I was trying to call against. It wasn't. Other questions under that one? So. Other questions broadly on the spreadsheets that you see? I don't want to belabor the point, but don't want to miss anything if you.
The appropriation, I know that there was some change, there was some things added to that appropriations list, and that's why there was something that was being used or paid. It wasn't on the appropriation list, but it wasn't really an addition.
Yeah, so similar thought, and that's where I was going next. So good transition there. Things like Soil and Water Conservation District, the Farm America, and the Egg Society itself. Those were all in this separate account. I have been consolidating everything under the umbrella of appropriations, if it's an appropriation at all. We had appropriations in 5 different places. That seems a little inefficient and hard to track, frankly. So at this point, and you'll see that growth over the last 2 or 3 years. Every year we've cleaned it up a little bit more and more, consolidated it more and more. And this is everything that I know about. The only thing that would even maybe meet that criteria is what I just talked about in the P&Z budget, which is that Farm and City luncheon. That could be called an appropriation potentially. But that is the only other thing, to my knowledge, that exists within the county structure that we could get close to calling an appropriation. And the reason I had it highlighted black on that spreadsheet in front of you is because I wanted to talk through the Egg Society a little bit. I mentioned it to you, in the preliminary levy settlement process. They requested a $20,000 increase from 2025 going into 2026. I stated I had a little bit of heartburn about that and why, but ultimately it was part of that preliminary, in their $20,000 increase. Dramatically put a little sad face in there, I guess. That's exciting. So it's in there as of right now. So just so you know, it is still at the $70,000 threshold. A lot of different ways you could take this conversation. You don't necessarily need to do that, but ultimately I need the gut check from you folks for how do you want to address that? What do you want to do? At the bottom line, if you need something to point at to say why the increase, it's insurance. Is that fair, Commissioner Hargit, to highlight increased insurance costs as?
I think just the whole fair in a nutshell,
Yeah, so
like it used to be.
costs themselves have increased, certainly. The cost to facilitate shows, activities in the grandstand keep going up.
Yes.
Revenues aren't ever going to catch them. And that may not be the point, but it's just the reality. Like many other services, the county helps in, appropriates funds for it. It's not as if we're trying to make money on them. It's providing a public good or service. So like everything else, it just gets to the point of the conversation of what's the cost benefit ratio and where should we be landing. When it's suggesting that the fare should go away, that's obviously not the point of the conversation. Is the board comfortable with the $20,000 increase from one year to the next?
I think we have to look at. I think we have to look at the fact that we're renting a building that can offset that 20 for sure. So I would be in favor of not increasing at 20,000 with that taken into consideration.
Was kind of a point I was gonna go with too. I mean, if we're renting the buildings, let's say flat rate 100,000 to the Egg Society, and we get use of the building when their fare is not in thing. I mean, all the buildings.
They're stuffed full of fair things, if you will.
Okay.
They have gates and equipment and barrels and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, we're not gonna get empty buildings to rent it all.
But there's several out there that they utilize for
They,
campers and boats and stuff.
they do
that
have rental equipment inside, yes.
we could take over and utilize that space.
Yeah,
But how much room do we need?
I don't know. That's another
I
question.
don't think we need more.
It's a good point. It just gets back to the conversation and it's kind of a revenue conversation from either person's perspective. If we remove their ability to generate revenue by renting out those spots on a floor, then it increases their budgetary pressure as well. So it comes back to the same cost benefit relationship that we need to find, whatever that may be.
I think the problem with the rental thing, and the sheriff is sitting here, so he knows that if water and land resources were here, they would know also that you can fill up those buildings, but at some point during the year, they need to be empty right, for the fair. And that's always the shuffle. I mean, it's a shell game on where everything can go at that point in time. And we still need to use the old county building for the poultry show. You know, which were rabbits and poultry. But I don't know that we need that much room that we put up that nice building out at Public Works to just have more space. I mean, I don't want to rent all the buildings just to say we rent them and don't have anything in them. Or to rent them and fill them up, only to have to have a full staff and pick everything out for 20 days in July.
And I think a lot of it is just seasonal stuff. You know, a lot of it, like with the equipment that Brian has and Chris has, you know, a lot of that stuff isn't used, but they're in the winter. Summer they come out.
I think we've figured some of that out now with the sheriff in building 4 and some of it with Chris over in building 4. And So we got back to the concrete building down here. Now the Second Street is done. Like,
So we're renting, is that a done deal? We're renting
Yes.
some space.
yes,
Is
building,
that in the budget?
complete building 4.
The cost of renting building 4 is in our budget
Right, but
and the 20,000 increases in the budget.
yes. Correct.
So when do we gotta make that correction?
Thus the conversation.
Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a question, just for those of us that are not as familiar with the operation of the fair as some of us are. We own the fairgrounds. We own one building out there,
We only got 5 buildings. out
5
there.
buildings.
Yeah.
and we make full use of those buildings
We do.
year round.
Not year, well, with the exception of like the old schoolhouse, that's kind of the base of operations for sheriff's
Sure,
office during the fair.
yes,
But to my knowledge, there's not much happening there outside of that throughout the year.
You guys hold some posse meetings, didn't they?
Yeah, we have our sheriff's posse meetings, FOP, fraternal order, police meetings out there.
Okay.
We use it for the holiday lights from time to time.
So a couple of things.
okay,
The other ones mainly garages that
Sure.
we're talking about, the
Yes.
recycling garage and then that multi-stall garage.
yeah, and those are the ones that I was kind of having in my mind.
And then you have the historical society that owns a building out there as well, which is
Okay.
also another unique rental.
And then the Ag Society owns the rest of the buildings in the grandstand.
Yes,
Um,
the county owns the land.
and the county owns the land. I knew the county owned the land. Some of this is just a shell game. I do agree philosophically with, don't get me wrong, I love storage space. But I also know the more storage space you have, the more stuff you accumulate. And we want to be thoughtful about, we need to have storage space for the things we have so that we're taking good care of it. But if you have more than what you need, there is the propensity to fill it up then. And so I do have that concern that I think I share with Commissioner Hargett, that it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about what comes in and out of those buildings. Some of you are much more familiar with that. But I don't, do we want to get in the business where we're taking over the buildings and then leasing part of it out or all of, I don't want to do that. That's just a mess. That's
think
more
that-
than I want to do.
I think that, but I think that Sam Morgan is the groundskeeper out there.
Okay.
When we took over building 4, we're probably gonna have to do some routine maintenance on building 4. The more buildings we take over, the more maintenance we're going to have to do on those buildings, and then that wouldn't happen through the Ag Society / Fair Board
Sure.
on that end of it. They have numerous shows out there. Sam is constantly moving equipment and items in and out of buildings.
Make room for things.
To be right. You know, they have dog shows and sheep shows and horse shows, all of them not during those weeks of the fair. But I'd rather still have the fair board have those buildings for whatever they're doing with them, and they are all full. And then maintain, you know, the brown tin ones, ISD 829 has their vans in there. Our school has vans in there. The other side of that is the archery club.
Um,
And they pay some rent in there, and the school pays some rent in there. So, and those are by far the nicest buildings. But where would you put the archery club, or, you know, where would the school then store it? I think it works fairly well right now. I mean, no disrespect on that.
And I'm not saying take away from those. I'm just thinking, we're at, we're given an appropriation of $70,000. We're paying them $20,000 rent. give them another $10,000 and buildings that aren't being utilized by anything. If the sheriff's office has a massive investigation where they have to take things, we have a place to dump it for a while. Until they get it squared away, instead of having to fight a spot. I'm just saying, I mean, we're paying them quite a bit of money already. Give them another 10 and then we just kind of control it. And I don't know how much they pay on the storage. I'm just,
That takes time and effort also, because they're taking those phone calls and backing. We're giving them 10,000 for the building fund
okay.
per year. We're giving them 50,000 in appropriations. I'm saying if they're asking for 70, we could go to 60 and they're still getting the 10 on top of it. It brings them to their 70. That's all I'm saying.
So that 10,000 that we're giving them for the rent,
Correct.
that building, they weren't getting revenue,
They were.
so it's replacing revenue, it's not adding.
It's a convenience thing too.
Yes.
I mean, they were renting space to a dozen plus individuals.
Sure.
So we said, we'll give you a slightly higher premium for us to be able to exclusively use it how we want to use it without disruption, which met a significant need for us. That was a win for us, certainly, because we did have some space pressures to keep things out of the elements. So not saying it wasn't an advantage for us, it certainly was.
Go ahead.
Tammy,
I don't think you're headed there, but I just want to caution you that if the county begins renting, if you have that property, an income generating property, then we're going to look at property taxes, which is going to be significantly more than you're going to generate from renting.
So we don't want to get into the
business.
Don't worry, to
I need to understand that.
No, and I don't think that's what Commissioner Milburn said.
No,
Not for us to get in the rental business.
Okay.
no.
For us to just take all the buildings over. But there's not a lot of room out there with all of the fair board stuff. Not their personal things, their stuff.
No, I'm just kind of hoping the fair board, I guess, or the egg society one, would be maybe a little something our way on that end. That's where mine was going with that for the most part.
And it just, in reality, you could probably double the existing appropriation number in terms of how we are assisting and helping the fair every single year. I mean, the displacement costs of staff, the time and energy and effort of staff that go into making that work are going to exceed the appropriation anyway. So it's not like we aren't partners in this. We are. The fair could not happen without the county's involvement. It couldn't.
We appropriate for like the use of the highway equipment out there as well.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's also the reality that even with an increased appropriation of $70,000, the fair is going to see some significant financial pressures. The Egg Society, because the costs for them are going up like everywhere, and they're going to have to make some tough decisions at some point about grandstand events, whatever it may be, because that's the most significant cost driver that they have. It's never going to be offset by the revenues.
Do you know, is there substantial debt? Does the Egg Society carry debt? No.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so they somehow get it to a break even every year. If they lose money on the fair in a year, how do they not have debt?
So if you recall, 2021, the county did make a one-time additional appropriation of about $45,000. Specific to the conversation you're having, because they needed significant repairs outside of just the roof, but the significant repairs to the grandstand and other things as well too. And it was very much the we're not sitting on a pile of cash for reserves, so
Right.
we don't have the ability to do this outside of the county assisting.
Well, and where I was going with that is, just if there's pressures, and there's gonna be pressures no matter what, like you said, whether we give 60,000 or 70,000. So I think those are pressures that they're just gonna have to work with, and I didn't know if they were sitting on a bunch of debt also, or if it was just kind of a yearly, okay, what can we do with the money we have coming in? You know, that's kind of their budgeting. They know the revenues they're getting, and then they got a budget accordingly.
Yeah, not aware of the debt, but I mean, if you look at the financial picture, you know, if there's $30,000 in the checking account at the end of the year, that's gonna go away. That's why I say to you, the only other conversation they have is to look at the actual operation. What do we have here? What does it cost? And make some decisions as a result.
They get some donations for what they're looking for too. And I don't know, I gave you all the paperwork, Michael, and I didn't know this either until one of the last meetings, that I believe they get $12 a day, the volunteers for working at the fair. I think it's $12 a day.
They give the volunteers.
The Ag Society pays the fair board, their group of 15, $12 a day. So when they're there from
Son of something.
no. Yeah.
I want to go back to one of Michael's comments about the real cost of the fair to the county. Because, I mean, this touches on our investment in 4-H and extension, obviously. And we have a big investment there, and we want that to come to fruition, and the participation of the fair is part of that. So these things are not, they're not separate issues. You know, we've got a budget for extension because we believe in the mission that is happening in extension, and particularly with 4-H and Waseca County. Well, a lot of that happens at the fair. We can't, and then we look at the other staff time and energy that goes into helping to make fair happen in partnership with the Ag Society, which we have always done and we always want to continue to do. But at some point, we have to leave it up to the members of the Ag Society to creatively decide what that fair is going to be and what the programming is going to be outside of what the county provides for 4-H and for all those things. And that's up to them to figure out, and I know they do some separate fundraising because, and I have appreciated the last few years that they're, I think, more actively going out and looking for sponsorships from businesses and from individuals. I'm just gonna say, I wouldn't necessarily have heartburn about giving them an extra $10,000 to 60,000. But a $20,000 jump in 1 year, they, just like we have to wrestle with every dollar every year, it's good for every organization to have to do that wrestle and do it a year at a time, and not, you look what happened when COVID money came in. Not that it wasn't great, and not that we didn't put it to really good long-term use here, but that can unbalance ships sometimes.
Could we briefly talk about soil and water before we go?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
Yep, but yeah, just to finish up with that, how do we proceed? And that might come with the soil and water conversation too, but if we want these appropriations changed, do we do we bring them up in, the meeting today, or do we, on the 16th?
You can give me direction right now. Not making a motion on anything, but if I understand that the will of the board is that the Egg Society appropriation should be at $60,000, then that's going to be within the recommendation that I actually give you.
On the 16th, then.
Is there an opportunity for us before the 16th, let's say, a work session at 4 on the 16th, that we have the Egg Society come in and just kind of give us some numbers to show?
I can provide you some additional numbers. So on that first part, probably not at 4, just because there's a midterm meeting before it.
Yes.
We try to do something towards the end of next week, if that was helpful. I'm sure they'd be happy, assuming they're available to do so, to give some additional insight. But we do have some more numbers, as Commissioner Harding mentioned. He dropped off a packet for me as well. I can certainly provide some.
I guess the fair, Waseca County Fair has always been the main attraction of Waseca County. I mean, we pull in 5,000 plus people during that week. And they utilize different avenues within Waseca and Waseca County. And I understand that we're providing security, in kind, and highway departments in kind stuff, and there are people using out there as well. On top of, as everything else has increased since COVID, and I want to go back to COVID because they had a year where they didn't get anything. And I think that hurt to a point. I mean, they tried some things, and there's so many aspects that use the Egg Society extension, and just people in general. So, I think I'd like to see them stay at that 7,000 range. And it's tough. It's a tough jump, and just because of different things that have happened over the past couple of years, I think it's just like everything else in our budget. It's gone up.
But what was mentioned was the insurance. And I know there was a change of insurance and there was some issues there. And I don't know that the county should take that whole bill, that increase. I think that needs to get shared. And that's where I'm struggling with just giving them their ask. I do want obviously the fair to continue and thrive, but there's got to be a little heartburn on both ends on that whole deal.
So let me frame that a little bit more if I can. So a year ago, we were having several conversations with the Egg Society. There were some additional pressures they were facing over the last 2-3 years prior to that. Culminated in conversations with their insurer at that time, MCIT. They ended up losing that coverage from MCIT. We did not agree on the path forward at that point in time. And myself, Commissioner Hardy, having those conversations. And the statement ultimately was made that, if you do this and your cost goes up $20,000, the expectation is that you're not coming in asking for it. That's why I say I had a little bit of heartburn when you increase the ask by $20,000 and then tell me it's for insurance, because that's what we said not to do. That being said, there are probably 24 other places that the costs have increased, and they have. So it's not the amount that is any kind of frustration for me at all. It's not. It's not the operation itself. Everybody wants to see it maintained and flourish, and we do a lot more outside of the appropriations to make that happen, which is why I mentioned it. So it has very little to do with the amount. It's the precedent and the basis for the ask is where I solely was coming from.
All right, we better briefly. Yep.
Where did we land on soil and water?
Oh,
That was a number, I know that was brought before us before, and we would look at it. And that is the number that you guys have landed.
so just to clarify for me, are we talking about the second half appropriation for 25 or 2026 budget?
2025.
So, yeah, chatting this through with the chair last week, it's on the list, knowing that there was going to be conversation today. So that was expected. Yeah, it's on the agenda. Their second half appropriation is on the agenda with the other second half appropriations. Fully expecting there to be more conversation surrounding it, but didn't want to leave it as a separate action item outside of that process.
And is it still wise to leave this in the appropriation column?
Opposed to what?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
Okay.
Chair, I was just thinking on that as well. You know, maybe we should just take it off the appropriation if it comes at the end of the year. Maybe we can come back to that, but just take it off the list. And just
But it's already done for the end of the year. It's already here.
this year's,
Right.
next year's.
Isn't the best place for funding soil and water is calling it under the appropriation umbrella?
Yeah, let me, yeah, that's maybe worth some conversation. I don't know how Michael will feel about it, but, you know, for the last 2 years, we have, talked about this shoring them up at the end of the year and not necessarily either not giving them that second half if their fund balance is in good shape, or and yeah, I struggle with the fact that we okay appropriations for 26 and then we renege on it at the end of the year. So I get where you're coming from. Maybe it shouldn't be on there as an appropriation, but anyway,
I have one specific thought about this. State statute says very clearly that counties may appropriate or may help fund. May, at least in my mind, screams and belongs on the appropriations list, because we may give them money. We don't have to give them money. You know, we're not called to match anything on this. But at the same time, the SWCD provides necessary mandated services for us. And they oversee WACA for us. They work in partnership with Soil and Water. They do some things for us that we need done, and they get some money from us to do that. And rightfully so. I think we have to have the discussion, and I don't necessarily have a problem with saying even on the appropriations list, we're gonna guarantee this much, and we're gonna consider this much more depending on where fund balance is in December. I think that's a perfectly fine policy to have on the appropriations list.
I think you stated it correctly, that they are on the hook for doing things for the county where
Yes.
none of these others are. That's the difference.
I have to think about that. I do, and I'm not.
what they're
I'm not
doing
dismissing
for
it.
the county is WACA right now, right? Because we
Yeah.
gave
Yeah.
them that.
So that's driven by a joint powers arrangement as
Yeah.
well. So we have about a 17,000, part of our natural resources block grant, which is $45,000 to $47,000 every year. 17,000 of that is almost solely WACA. So it ends up being a pass through. And this year we saw it'll be $22,000 to $25,000 depending upon what other bills come in December. I'm not aware of it. I'm just assuming it'll be some. There was a lot of WACA activity happening this year. So we do have $10,000 budgeted in the land and water resources area in 2026 for costs over and above in WACA that NRBG isn't going to cover. But that is driven by a joint powers arrangement. So it's statutorily a county process. And we're the local government unit, but we can farm that out to somebody that has the ability and training to do it. And I say that purposefully because the statute says that it has to be a qualified individual that does it. There's also an advantage for us from a land and water resource and service delivery standpoint, not to be the enforcement person as well as the development person, I guess, if you will. So some separation of duties is logical and helpful there from a service delivery standpoint. At the end of the day, back to the question, I don't think well, I should say from my perspective, it doesn't necessarily matter where it lands or what we call it. It doesn't change what action you have to take where the other is, as Commissioner Mulder was stating as well. You can make a decision mid-year because something may change with the neighborhood service center and say, well, this isn't going to make sense to send in this appropriation in the second half payment. But if the county and the commissioners ultimately determine that we really want to have this as an annual conversation, we want to make this payment or appropriation based upon the actual work being done, you obviously have the ability to do it. But we look at, I look at appropriations in that term just broadly, that it's fulfilling a government purpose. It's not something that is practical for us to hire and do and facilitate ourselves, but we know it has to be done by somebody, or we deem it an important service by somebody.
Then it could be argued both ways. Then you could have the Action Society sitting here saying, well, we need that to be at net zero on December 31st. That's why I think that everything else is a gift. That's a payment.
Mr. Chair. But I think it should stay in the appropriation list. Those dollars should be whatever we want to appropriate to SWCD should be figured out when they're doing their budgets the first half of the year for the next year. Because they already came down 25, 30,000. They were asking 90-some thousand, and they did take 25 or 30,000 out of their reserves to drop that number.
It's budgetary.
They took it out because they had those extra dollars in, so they did take them down. But their numbers are floating all over during the year. So it does get tough for them to be on their side for a little bit.
Well, yeah,
It does
if
get
they
tough
have
for
some
them to
flows,
move
it's hard for them to tell where the reserve's gonna land year after year.
But you gotta have some time during the year to figure that out. Some point in time, you gotta have a date.
So we still have a soil and water account created under the general fund. It's a really easy shift to create it or slide those dollars in a separate category or a separate fund. It's not any less trackable necessarily. From the operational standpoint, it's not going to change anything we do. But if it makes it more consistent with library, like we're talking about with Main Prairie, in theory, Main Prairie could be an appropriation, but we don't necessarily look at it that way. So it's not that we don't have the ability to do it. It's just nothing that won't change.
Let me ask one more question, Kira. The WAC enforcement, that is not included in the appropriation. That just goes, as they bill us, we pay them.
Yes, so if you look at the SWCD budget, they have basically 3 lines of revenue as it pertains to the county.
Yeah.
The $60,000 is separate from the assumed revenue they will be getting through that natural resources block grant pass through.
Okay.
Yeah, so that anything that exceeds the NRBG is billed back to the county, and we would incur that from a levy standpoint.
Okay, so knowing that the one service that they must do for us, WACA, that's not in the appropriation. And the appropriation money really is their work on behalf of property owners here in Waseca County to help them with projects and to be the fiscal agent for one watershed, one plan, that regional water planning. And bring some expertise to that, but that is all under that state statute of shall. The WACA, we must, and we're paying for that, and it's not part of that money. That money is purely an appropriation, and I don't have any problem asking SWCD to say, what are we getting for this? Like, how many projects from one watershed, one plan have been done here? You know, where's how is our SWCD staff spending their time to show us what your work has been?
I would like to see that as well. I'd like to see what projects they've done in Waseca County in 2025 or.
Yeah, I mean, historically, we're in the midst of, I think we're just getting the second tranche of the year 3 and 4 funding for one watershed, one plan. I would be very interested in seeing, particularly the one watershed, one plan, because that's a major funding source. And Waseca County is coordinating that. And SWCD is the fiscal agent for that. I mean, that's seated right here. We should understand that better.
All right. Any other discussion? Does I want to end this budget session?
Just, Mr. Chair, if I can really quickly, posed earlier, just in terms of gut check where other counties are from a change in levy percentage standpoint. So this is just capturing everything statewide, county, city, township, et cetera, school district. So just highlighting some of our friends and neighbors. Worth 8.5%, Brown 10%, Warren 15%. I see 0.8%. Civil is the one I mentioned earlier, and Tammy asked me in terms of who I think was the lowest of the people who are in front of us or in our region. Steel, I guess, but just letting you know in terms of the ongoing conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be important and I don't know if we can, it'll be realized that whether people understand it or not is, you know, they're only getting a tax effect of 3%.
Correct, yeah.
You know, they're not getting a tax effect of 6.2 or whatever it was.
Correct.
That's already been there.
Yep.
From the library.
Yeah. Yes, of course. That's what I try to.
And we'll try to, you know, continually educate on that, but
yeah. Yeah, the other 3.12 has always been there and isn't changing. We said that levy amount for the library is held flat from last year. We just took ownership of it. Or reminding the store that it was already there.
that's what makes it so much more difficult to compare yourself to other counties, is because you don't know exactly what their makeup is on certain things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. The county's effective levy increase is absolutely 3%.
So that's what I've been telling people that we're at 3.
Yeah.
And I throw the library off to the side.
Right.
That's all I had, sir. Thanks.
All right, I will adjourn the work session then, and we'll record meeting in 15 minutes.
Let's make sure we can see the flag.
See, just to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone, this morning. We will start out with public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Public comment? You online? Right, so we will move on to presentations. Power on Midwest. Welcome.
Good morning. Is this working okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, commissioners. Happy holidays. My name is Matt Ellis. I'm from Great River Energy. I'm joined by Mike Frank and my colleagues from ITC Midwest. We represent 2 of 4 electric utilities that are developing a new transmission line that's designed to provide continued reliable service, really to southern Minnesota and the broader Midwest. This project's very much in the early stages, so we very much appreciate you giving us a few minutes this cold Minnesota morning to introduce the project. And so we're going to talk about this morning about what is Power on Midwest, why is it needed, what will it look like. The one question we won't be able to answer in detail today is where is it located? And the reason for that is just because we're in the very early stages, but Mike will talk a bit about the process that we'll be going through. A bit of a spoiler, and we'll show a map up. When it comes to Waseca County, only the very southeastern corner of it is potentially impacted by this project, but it's to support reliability, and so we wanted to err on the side of over communicating. I know we have some time dedicated at the end for questions. We also are more than happy if you want to just stop us, interrupt us as we're going through. You can just leave it right here on that slide. Let me introduce. I said we're from 2 of the 4 utilities that are developing this project. I'm from Great River Energy. We're a generation and transmission cooperative, along with our 26 member owner distribution cooperatives. We serve about 2/3 of the state from a geographic standpoint. Distribution cooperatives include Steel Waseca Power. Mike is from ITC.
Yep, ITC
Midwest.
Midwest, based out of our headquarters in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm right over here in Alberta, Minnesota's office for me, but we own and operate roughly 6,600 transmission miles of circuitry there. So, you know your rest.
Perfect. Our other 2 partner utility, Otter Tail Power Company and Excel Energy. And so combined, we serve a vast majority of the state of Minnesota's electric power needs. When it comes to large infrastructure projects, it's quite common in Minnesota. It's actually advantageous for utilities to partner together. It's much more cost effective. It's much less land impactful if, for example, rather than ITC looking, what does ITC need to serve their electrical needs, and Great River Energy doing that on our, we partner together and we look collectively, what do we need to do? And go to the next slide. Electricity is one of these things we almost take it for granted, right? When you wake up in the morning, you flip your switches on, you don't think about, all right, the light's gonna come on, you depend on it. And I think, it's these cold mornings that remind us that it's not just a convenience, but it's a necessity for us living in this climate. Our grid right now, when you look at it, and I'm an engineer, and so I'm going to boast a little bit. Right now, it has about a 99.9% reliability rating, extremely reliable. And the reason it's reliable is because of the decisions and the investments that we've made over the past decades. Infrastructure takes a long time to build, to plan, and so we have to always be planning ahead. When we look ahead the next 20 years now, we're looking, what do we need for our power grid to move our needs? When we look ahead at the next 20 years, what we see is that both how we use electricity and how we produce electricity is changing. And so as such, we also need to change those transmission lines, our grid, which moves it from where it's produced to where it's needs. And this Power on Midwest, which is a transmission line, is really the one of the answers to that changing mix to make sure that our electric stays reliable for decades to come. Next slide, please. This line is a new proposed transmission line. Again, it's called Power on Midwest. If you're going to use a road analogy, we use a lot of road analogies in the electric industry. It's the equivalent of a new interstate highway. It is the beige buffered line that you can faintly see here on the map. It traverses from South Dakota area, so Big Stone City, South Dakota, south to Brookings, across the Lakefield area of Minnesota to Pleasant Valley, that's just north of Austin. And then it has a termination point just north of Rochester and then the Hampton Cannon Falls area. The line is part of a broader network, and we wanted to provide this zoomed out view because that's really how the grid works. It's this large interconnected system, and it's part of a broader network of lines that's all being simultaneously developed at the same time. These are all these dotted lines. And together, what these allow you to do is it allows you to move power quite seamlessly, and you can move it all the way from the Dakotas into Minnesota, from Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, and vice versa. And I think something that's interesting, when you think about your grid right now, it's very common for 1 hour your electric can be generated quite locally. And power's coming in. And in fact, there's a lot of times we have excess energy in this part of the state and we'll be shipping it out. The next hour, it's actually quite common that if you have a different weather pattern or just different use patterns, powers come from different states. And it could even come from the tip top of Manitoba. It's very common in Minnesota right now. And so this interconnected network allows us to keep the grid reliable. And so that's what this line is doing, is it's looking ahead really 20 years into the future and trying to answer, okay, what do we need to be able to transfer in, through, and out of Minnesota in order to maintain this reliability that we depend on. Go to the next slide, please. This project plays a key role in that portfolio, and really what it is, it's the connection to southern Minnesota for that broader network. It's what brings power. If you're going to use a road analogy, it's both the on and the off ramp into southern Minnesota to support our electrical needs. We've break this down into why the project is needed into 4 categories, and I'll talk a bit more about them in the next slide. But really your takeaway on this is what's the project designed to do is maintain reliable electric as our sources of electricity change and how we use electricity change, regardless of the weather. So 24/7, 365, that is the goal. And again, this is very much a future looking project. Go to the next slide. We say reliability a whole lot, and really that is a pillar. And again, to me, when I say reliability, the simplest is keeping the lights on. As we go right now, there's this interesting balance with reliability. Electricity is one of these commodities that it can't be stored, at least in an efficient manner right now. There's some technologies, and so we always have to have a perfect balance between what's demanded on the grid and the generation, and we have to be able to move it between those. And so by having this access to a very broad, diverse array of different generating resources, that helps us keep the lights on for the most cost effective or the lowest cost. The other thing is when we look out, for whatever reason, just weather seems it's weirder these days. It's more extreme, it's more crazy. And so by having access to generators that are even further outside the state and local, it's that diversity. And that diversity is what supports that. In addition, there's a physical aspect when we talk about this. And so we also have to make sure that when we build these infrastructures that are built to withstand whatever Mother Nature wants to throw at them, that they're tall, that they are robust to be able to support that. Go to the next slide. Demands for electricity, they're growing. And especially when we look out over the next 20 years, we see that growth continuing. And I will go out on a limb and say that each one of you can even see that growth in electrical usage is in your homes. You just look at how much stuff is being plugged in. I don't know about you all, but I know we have that outlet in the kitchen right when you walk in the door where everyone plugs their cell phone in or their watch or their headphones. I have kids, and that outlet, we're fighting for space on that outlet on a daily basis. And I don't remember that, a couple of years ago, a 1% growth at every single person's house over 20 years, it doesn't seem like much. In fact, it's quite microscopic when you're looking at it, but when you add that up over all that, it actually adds up to be a quite significant amount from a utility perspective. And that's just on the residential side. When we look out at some of these bigger trends too, manufacturing and industrial usage. When you look at manufacturing now, it's much more automated, it's much more robotic. That all drives increased electrical use. Electrification, so things like conversion from natural gas to using electricity for things like heating and cooling, transportation, not only on the residential side, but also on the commercial side. We also have some emerging industries, very on the beginning, things like data centers and AI. All of these things combined, and what they're really doing is they're driving increased growth in electrical usage, and the current grid is not capable of supporting that growth unless we make these sorts of changes. Next slide. The other aspect that's changing from a macro level is how we produce electricity. The power plants that we've relied on in this state for decades, most of those were built back in the 1970s. And so many of those base load plants, many of them have retired. And when we look ahead over the next 20 years, specifically to about the year 2040, we expect more of those plants to retire. When we look at what will replace that energy, current plants right now, it's primarily wind and solar and some batteries. There's also some natural gas in the mix. The one thing I will say when it comes to transmission lines are agnostic to the types of generation that can go on there. The same transmission line can transport electrons from coal, from nuclear, from wind, from solar, and do it on a simultaneous basis. And so really, again, we're looking at this as a future. This line's not even expected to be in service until 2034. And so what this does is this gives us flexibility to be able to enable additional generation that we need to serve that load, regardless of their technology. So it gives us flexibility that as technologies change as we go forward, that this line can support those technologies. Next slide. The last part of this is really around customer and economic benefits. Infrastructure, and I know this commission just had a budget meeting, and infrastructure costs money, period. And when we make these investments, we do a lot of planning work to make sure that this is the very best investment that can be made to meet those reliability needs. The other thing, though, when we look at investments, we don't look at just the upfront capital cost, but we look at the total cost and how it impacts the bill. And so with this project, what we do expect is an increase in the transmission portion of power bills, but we actually expect a reduction in other parts of your electric bill, the generation side, that actually winds up being a net increase. And so let me explain this. Let me bring it at least a little closer to home for me, and hopefully this analogy works. I'm putting new windows in my house right now. The one way I can look at that is those windows cost money up front, period. I have to spend money. But if I look at those windows, I don't look at just how much my upfront cost is, but I look at what's my total cost. How will, if I make this investment, how will it impact my heating, my cooling bills? How much maintenance work will I have to put into it? And I can make a different investment. It changes my investment if I look at what's my total out the door over the life of those windows to make sure that I'm trying to minimize costs. And that's what we're doing with this project. And again, so what we expect with this project is for every dollar that's invested in the project, it will receive a return of about $1.60 to $3.10 over the life of the project. In addition, as we go through, we have sourcing principles. We try to make sure that as we're building these projects and we know they're impacted by local communities, that we're trying to put as much money back into the local communities with those. So trying to spend and support locally. In addition, depending on where this is located, there is also property tax benefits for those communities. So I'm going to turn this over to Mike now. He's going to talk a bit more about the potential, the routes, the search area, as well as the technology.
Sounds good. Thank you, Matt. Again, Mike Frank with ITC Midwest. And we bring up this map on the show where, as Matt mentioned, we're very early in the process of this project and wanted to hear from everyone locally. But this is more of the study area that we've identified where the line would potentially run through. We don't know the specific route, but that's why you can see it's an entire county wide. And in Waseca County, it gets just that southeast corner. And, again, we're really early on in the project. So once we get more information and we get farther into those route studies, we'll have this narrowed down to a smaller corridor. But for right now, that's the reasoning. We do know the endpoints, as Matt mentioned, where the existing substations would be. So, as much as we'd love to just draw a straight line, it doesn't work that way. But, certainly wanted to point out those endpoints of the substations that we know of. Next slide. We talked about MISO, and I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with that acronym, but Mid-Continent Independent System Operator is this area's regional transmission planning organization. And when they put these projects out in this portfolio for tranche 2.1, they looked at the most efficient way to get the power where it's needed and determine that 765 kilovolt or 765,000 volts was the most efficient way to get that from point to point. The one thing that I love this slide, you've probably seen many of the 345 structures around there, that usually the larger single monopole designs. Sometimes you'll see 3 circuits, sometimes they'll be double circuited, 3 lines, excuse me. So single circuit versus a double circuit. But it takes 6 of those single circuit configurations to equal what one of these 765 structures are capable of. And I think about that, I mean, I come from family farm myself. So I think about that in terms of landowner impacts, or right of way that would be necessary for those 6 lines versus 1 single line. If you want to switch to the next slide there, I'll get into what the structures look like. So while these structures do appear large, 150 to 175 feet in height, the one thing I want to point out is that footprint is 35 to 35 to 50 by 50 is the expected footprint of it. And additionally, with this lattice tower structure type, the span lengths are anticipated to be 11 to 1,300 feet in between. So coming from a farm, a quarter section, you're going to end up with roughly 2 to 3 per quarter section. So, I think engineering did a fantastic job trying to minimize those landowner impacts. Additionally, the clearance is 60 to 80 feet. The one thing we commonly get for a question is that ground underneath going to be usable? The answer is yes, because we worked with some different manufacturers of equipment, and what's your current largest equipment? What's your anticipated growth of that equipment? And subclearances accordingly. So that's really our goal, to keep everything usable around and underneath those structures. And right away width, we're anticipating roughly about 250 foot wide for an easement width. Next slide, please. And this gets into the state regulatory process. And is anybody familiar with that or dealt with the regulatory process in Minnesota? So there's 2 primary parts to it: certificate of need and the route permit application. The certificate of need we're anticipating to file with the Minnesota Public Utility Commission in February of 26. And then it'd be in 27, we'll get closer in the route permit application. In between times, we'll have a series of meetings. And if you want to switch to the next slide, we'll get into some of those details. So as you can see, we're in 25, very early in the process. We did get done with a series of open houses, just general public open houses, and kind of to hear from feedback from landowners. I think we ended up with between 7,000 and 8,000 notifications went out. Was that correct? So all across the state of Minnesota, went up to all the landowners that would potentially be impacted. It got sent county-wide, and I think we excluded some of the major metro areas. But as we get into 26 and mention the certificate of need, and that gets filed with the Public Utility Commission, that talks about why is this project necessary. We talk a little bit about some of the environmental pieces of it, and then that all gets reviewed. And to go along with that, then we start having the public information and scoping meetings. And again, these are all state regulatory meetings, so it's not this us as energy providers are putting on these meetings. So, but we encourage, public participation, landowners, commissioners, townships, whoever would like to attend, would like to hear the feedback. And, that's where we also take the deep dive into, what are some of the local knowledge of, is there wetlands, any protected endangered species, those types of things. So a lot gets put in there as we get into these meetings. And certainly it's a good way for local knowledge to bring up, is there any concerns? And then we're actually going to end up with 2 rounds of that route permit open houses, just because of the scope of the project, and want to make sure everyone gets a chance to attend. So as we get into summer of 26 and fall of 26, we'll have the public open houses, and then the final one will actually be it'll be a public hearing with administrative law judge there. And then as we roll into 27, that's when we're going to get into the route permit application. And as these meetings progress, it'll, as I mentioned, we'll narrow that down from a county-wide more to a narrower route. And that's when we can really start to deep dive into landowner questions, concerns, comments, anything like that. And in the winter of 27, we would anticipate the Public Utility Commission will then make their final decision on the certificate of need. And then later in 27, we will get into the route permit public information meetings and scoping meetings. And then again, we'll have a hearing very similar to the first one on the public hearing that it will be for the route permit as we get into 27, 28. And then final decision, of course. Construction's anticipated to start somewhere between 2030, 2032, and hopefully wrap up by 2034. Next slide, please. And these were the spots where we had our open houses, and these were the first 2 weeks in November. You can advance to the next slide. And these were just the individual counties. And I think we picked most of the counties based on where we were going to get the most amount of participation and the greatest landowner potential impacts there. Yep. Go ahead. And I encourage everybody that the website is live. You can certainly stay connected on there. You can sign up for updates. If you have questions, you can send an email directly. poweronmidwest.com is the website, and it is intended to keep everybody up to date as the project progresses. And we wanted a phone number too. I mean, not everybody is technology enabled, so wanted that option for everybody. And I encourage you. I don't know if you've had many questions on it or heard anything about the project, but certainly feel free to check this website out and pass this along to anybody if they are in question or would like to get in touch with anybody. We're happy to help answer anything we can. And thank you again for having us. We really appreciate your time. I think that most of the project would fall in Commissioner Christopherson's area. You're in the southern area, is that correct? Yeah. So I would guess you would have more impacts than anybody, but often we see landowners that are near the county lines where they may be on either sides. But feel free to reach out anytime. We're happy to help answer any questions.
Got a couple of questions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, do you guys have the power of eminent domain? If you got it, I mean, this is a necessity. It falls under necessity. So if you had roadblocks all along the route, which I'm sure you run into plenty of conversations about that, but you can, I'm sure that's probably the last resort, but you do have that ability then.
It is possible, and Minnesota also has, I can't remember the specific statute number that we talk about by the farm. That was mentioned in our public open houses. I've never dealt with that.
Yeah, maybe I can just, let me zoom out, just talk about the
Yeah.
process. So routing, right? It's transmission infrastructure. I always say that the most negative concept, it has impacts. You know, it's on us to try to minimize those impacts. Routing, we start really wide, we start to narrow, we get down to routes. And throughout that time, we're taking feedback, and what we're trying to do is find that Goldilocks path that has the least impact, so people will support it and have pushback. At the same time, I don't walk into a lot of places where people have said, "Where have you been my whole life? I've always wanted a transmission line." So the way that it works is we propose ultimately a route or route options to the state, to the Public Utilities Commission. The Public Utilities Commission though ultimately decides on what is that final route. So they pick the final route. When that route is determined by the Public Utilities Commission, then we as utilities will go out and we'll negotiate with each of the landowners. And again, every property is different. We want to make everyone whole along there, and it is always our goal to secure voluntary easements for each one of those properties. As a last resort, if the commission deems the power line is needed for the public's convenience and need, then you're right. Then because we need a contiguous path for a power line, then the eminent domain, but it is a last resort in that process. As part of that eminent domain proceedings, people also have the right under a Minnesota statute called by the farm, that if people want, they can say, hey, we don't want you just to secure this easement to build a line on the property that you own, but we would rather you purchase our property. Then property owners have that right, but that's on them to elect those. But again, we use that as very much a last resort.
Okay. Good to know. And then you talked about, changes in electricity production, and we're going to our legislators this year to lift the moratorium on nuclear energy in Minnesota. How can that affect this if, because that's 10, 15 years down the road, even if we do get that moratorium?
Yeah.
How can that mess up your guys' transmission projections?
And it doesn't so much, just because it's a fantastic question. I can say over the road, when we were on the road the last 2 weeks, it was questions like that I would say were the top questions, specifically around nuclear. And it doesn't. And the reasons being is, so with this power line, think of this as more of an interstate highway. And so when these new generators connect, they're typically not connecting directly at the highway. They're connecting on the offshoots to it, on the equivalent of your county roads onto that. And so regardless of where those generators connect and regardless of the type, this interstate highway helps move the power from where it's being produced to where it's needed. And so that's all part of that resource mix. And again, power lines, they provide that flexibility because they're agnostic to the types of generator that they can move.
Okay. A couple questions for you. On your highlighted area of your transmission line, when you talk generators, that line pretty much covers all wind field farms. Are you planning to tie them windmill farms into that to help offset that? Is that what you call like a generator?
Correct. Yeah. So it could be wind, it could be solar. There's potential there's some natural gas in that area. But yes, all those generators connect, and typically they're going to connect at a lower voltage level. At the highest, typically be at 345, and then that will tie up to this grid. So if you think of it like a tree branches almost, where you're going to have the generators as the leaves, they're going to connect onto the branches, and then this is going to be the trunk.
Okay.
And that's going to move that around.
I just find it interesting how it seems that's all our wind farms are highlighted there.
And that's really, what you're doing with these large is you're trying to connect, especially areas that have a lot of generation, and then you're connecting load and vice versa so that it moves it around.
My last question, and it's in the future, are you looking at possibly the wireless transmission lines?
As I say, we've looked, I know it's been looked at, and I'm a big fan of Tesla. If you know Nikola Tesla, I'm a history guy, and I know he always was trying to look at that. Right now, that technology just doesn't exist,
No,
and especially be able to move the types of power that we need to move.
The Pleasant Valley one is right west of Racine, Minnesota. And they've been adding on there for years and years. And in the last 10, they've really come on and taken everything north and to the west. Will your transmission lines be part of the system that they've been installing, or will it be a new build entirely?
It will be built, it'll be an extension of that existing Pleasant Valley substation. So if you're familiar with the area, there's actually a natural gas generator right there. Right now, the proposal is that this new substation be located on that same property that's owned by Great River Energy right now.
Sure.
Very similar on the Lakefield side. It's ITC Midwest substation there and anticipated expansion of that to get the 765 infrastructure in and out of there along with all the substation components there. Any questions for gentlemen here? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Information for us too. Okay, do we have, introduction of this thing?
Let's see.
Good.
Seen all these faces.
Then we would move on to approval of agenda. Is there anything needed to be corrected or added? Commissioner Krause?
No, sir, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hargit?
No, sir, Chair.
Commissioner Milbert?
No, sir.
Nothing from admin?
No, sir.
If not, then I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second, or
Moved by Commissioner Walters, second by Commissioner Hargit. Approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We would look for the approval of county board minutes. Waseca County Board of Commissioners work session minutes, November 4th. Commissioners meeting minutes, November 4th. And then commissioner meeting minutes, November 18th. Everyone's had a chance to look at those. There's not any questions. I would look for a motion to approve as a slate.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second, Milbert.
Moved and seconded to approve as a slate. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Approval of bills. 2026-2027 MPCA County Feedlot Program Delegation Agreement. County Board Chair's signature requested, conditional use permit for Fox Garden LLC. And partial release of exclusive agricultural use zone restricted covenant. Is there a motion to approve that? I'll move with Hargit. Is there a second?
Second, Walter.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as a slate. Discussion.
Just a quick comment.
Yep.
Always when we look over the consent agenda, these are routine things that happen, and so we don't always appreciate the staff work that goes into them. And I think we should. In particular, obviously planning and zoning had a lot of work on this, but our feedlot guy who's in the room deserves some kudos here. I think about how important our feedlots are for our economy here and the work that goes into that via our county to make sure that all our feedlots can operate within the regulations and do a good job and get the support they need, the technical support. And so this is a lot of work, and it is very routine here because we got a lot of it to do. But thanks to staff that it gets done in a routine way so that all our feedlots can just operate the way they need to. big economic impact for us.
Yeah, the lengthy report.
Bless your heart.
Thank you, Mr. Zabel.
Right, any other comment?
I have one question on the solar. I think it's just overall. A lot of that is when they dismantle that, it says it has to go to a recycler. What if people want to reuse the stuff instead of take it to a recycler?
I think the intent of the statement is that they take the responsibility for cleanup and restoring the site to its original appearance.
Okay.
I don't think we're really actually concerned with what they do. They just have to contribute costs for reclamation and remediation of the original site.
And then my one other question is with the solar sites, as a general, not this one, just overall, that if they are on fire and contaminations get into the dirt, are they required in there to clean that up?
Yeah, I think that again would fall under the same reasoning for why we require those escrow amounts, all under the umbrella of remediation and reclamation. So if there's anything that changes or contaminates or any kind of hazardous substance or soil saturation of anything, that amount that is set aside that is required in escrow would be able to be utilized for that.
Because I was looking at it, I didn't see anything like, they get on fire because there's a lot of contaminants that would run down.
There are.
And if we have a watershed close by, or if it gets someplace, I just don't know. 45 would be enough to clean that up. I'm just, as an overall thought.
Yeah, because it is stated as a decommissioning escrow. So that's a good point, is that if something happens mid-life, I would imagine they would be responsible for the cleaning up if they didn't abandon it.
Yeah, I mean,
Then it would be the decomposition.
right. I couldn't specifically say what all the requirements the MPCA and EPA require of the actual holders. I know that they exist and that they're significant because of the chemicals involved. There's a little bit of division of labor, I'm sure, there that is going to exceed our local oversight.
But my concern would be that it would fall upon the landowners.
Mr. Chair, do you want the planning and zoning administrator to address that?
Yeah, if you've got some insight to that, I guess that we should hear it.
In my conversations between the landowner and the solar company and the projects that we have gone through this year, they have a contract between the landowner and the solar company that we don't necessarily have purview to or oversight. But across the board, each time it has been said that it's beneficial for the solar company and the landowner to be on the same page about what happens if the solar is decommissioned. And so I believe in some of the snippets of contracts that I've seen, they have their own set of penalties if things aren't, and their own financial arrangement that are beyond what we as the county require in our escrow agreement. So my understanding, especially talking to some of the landowners, is that's one of their primary concerns. But the landowner generally has a separate contract with the solar company and they have covered all of that. We just want to make sure that there's additional coverage by requiring the escrow agreement for the decommissioning.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda? I know that, call the question, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Got our first action item, which is second half appropriations.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your additional time this morning. This is a commonly recurring item. You see this in July and December of every year for the appropriations that have been approved as part of that budgetary program for the existing fiscal year. This obviously is the second half of that listing. You've had a listing in your packets. A couple of these, as noted on here, are paid in full or at least one time throughout the year. The only exception to that logic in this instance was the Neighborhood Service Center, which the board took action to advance that second half appropriation last month. So that was done and removed from this particular listed payment, of course. So in total, we would look for any conversation or question regarding the second half appropriations and ultimately request approval to get these dollars processed.
All right. Is there motion to approve the second half appropriations? Is there discussion ahead of that?
I'll move it to get us to discussion.
Moved by Commissioner Malter. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Milbreath. Discussion. Let's go first.
I'd like to take off where we left off with soil and water on that work session. See where we can go with that.
Well, I guess I'll make my comments. These are approved appropriations for 2025. We approved them going into about a year ago. We've had several discussions about how we handle soil and water because of they had a pretty healthy reserve. But the question always comes is how do we measure that, or how do we gauge that for these appropriations? We've talked about some kind of an agreement to say, okay, we're going to give you the first half, but then we want to look at your second half is in question until you can prove you need it. But we've never really put that agreement together yet. And I'd like to see something like that. I worry about when we approve the budget and these organizations all see the approval of the budget and they anticipate that money coming, and then we don't send it. So I don't think it's something we want to consistently do. If we're going to do that, then we need to have some kind of agreement with that organization. Any other thoughts?
Just a couple. One of the things that, and I agree with much of what you said. If we say we're going to do it, unless we have an agreement to re-examine it later, it's cleaner just to do it then. One of the things that makes soil and water different is their fiscal year is July 1 to June 30 because they go on the state fiscal year, where we do not. And so during the work session, I indicated and would indicate again that it would be nice to get them in front of us to talk about scope of work that they're doing, number of projects. I know they're administering one watershed, one plan for us. That's on the administrative side, but they're also supposed to be, their staff is supposed to be working on developing projects with property owners that get funded through that multi-county grant. We don't want to just do the coordinating and the fiscal management of that grant. We want some of that grant money to do projects here in our county. And I don't know that I have a good sense of what, how many of those projects are happening here. And so understanding how that money in particular, because that's a big funding source for them, is getting used across the 4 counties and particularly here would be helpful to me. I don't necessarily have a lot of heartburn over approving the second half. But if we feel like we need more information in order to include them on our appropriation for 26, we have some time to do that because their fiscal year does not start until the July 1st. So, if that's a sweet spot, I don't know if it is, but, I agree. If we commit, unless we have an agreement that says we're gonna look and you bring us some information before second half to help us know where you're at so we can do this. I have a little discomfort because by doing it in our budgeting process, we are kind of committing to making sure that we're providing that support.
When I was on soil and water, there were 2 of us subcommittee, soil and water. And there's still 2 subcommittee on soil and water, which is different than the whole rest of this slate.
Yes.
There's a main and an alternate on Cannon River watershed. And from there, I see singles and possibly an alternate on Historical Society, Arts Council, Senior Citizen. I mean, what I'm saying is this is a subcommittee action. I had a talk with Ms. Spooner and she said that it lands well here. I have no idea where it was 8 years ago when we were in it with Steel Company. I don't remember how that was looked at that time. It's just, all I'm saying is that this is a number that's come up from the subcommittee. But like everyone else said, in Prairie coming to us now with the library board, they're not gifts, they're numbers from a solid budget that's looked at by a subcommittee that everyone on the board is going to look at and know about, instead of this being somewhat generic, if you will, to me. Not that I can't say, well, we'll leave it here. Now I need to go and look at the soil and water budget. That's, it just seems to be a different action than the rest to me. Maybe I'm not, maybe it's just Tuesday. It's just, I don't know.
No, it is. It's a different animal than the rest of them. But, yeah. Go ahead. Oh, Mr. Wright.
I agree. We budgeted for this amount for this year. And I really think, okay, I can vote yes for this year, but I think we really need some information before we get deep in the weeds next year to make this appropriation for us. I'd like to see our projects. I really would like to see projects that happen in Waseca County with all the funding, not just ours, but what they're getting from the state, to see how they are helping our farmers. Yeah, I would really like to see that.
And I think I can vote for this. I mean, this is what's happened. If we can look at it next year going forward, because every time you have a presentation from soil and water, myself, if I'm not on the subcommittee, it's Charlie Brown's teacher. It doesn't mean as much because I'm relying on the subcommittee people to make those decisions.
So could we task the subcommittee and look from the administrator to look at some kind of agreement, I guess. They have a lot of different agreements, but that we see, you know, we okay what we consider a 26 appropriation. But with that, we want to see projects, we want an update this time of year, a year from now, before we okay that.
So what specifically do you want to see?
Yes,
Do
we
you
want
want to see, 24 projects, 25 projects?
what's happening in the
Yeah,
fiscal
what's-
year that we're giving them. So
So as far as waterways, soil health, riparian,
For Marion, we always see that. It's,
anything that they're involved in that you want to see
I would say, yeah, the bigger projects.
compared to other counties. Or you want to see how much other counties are doing
no,
compared to Waseca for dollar return.
I think what we're looking at is just projects that are happening in Waseca County. This is a Waseca County taxpayer money. How's it helping Waseca County?
And I don't know if it's our boards. But I guess I wouldn't mind seeing, we're one watershed, one plan. How much of that block money is coming into there? What percentage are we keeping here? We know we're what, 40-some% of the watershed? Waseca County?
No,
Not that much.
no, it is,
80-some%.
it is 83.6% of our county acres. One of the reasons we took it on is because it is a vast amount of our county acres. But Blue Earth County has got more acres than we do.
Okay,
Yeah,
but then how many, yeah, okay, well, whatever, that doesn't matter, but we're a larger chunk, so
we are a large chunk.
are we getting our money's worth out of that state money?
I'm not saying, Commissioner Crosby, I'm not saying that anybody's doing it wrong. I'm just saying that the rest of the list is a gift for them to promote what they do. This is a budget to cover what they're not covering. None of the rest of them are, yes, it goes into their budget and it's used how they see it, but that number doesn't change. And so we're covering their budget at the end of the year.
Or we're adding to their budget.
And then there would be a second half appropriation.
But we don't know where that's going to end.
Then you're gonna get everything they're getting.
But if we're always looking at it this time of year, their financials, then won't you get that uniformity year after year?
Because, like Commissioner Malter said, they're not gonna end up on December 31st of not opening the door on January 2. Because they're June 30th to July 1st. Yes. Yeah.
One of the reasons why I remain comfortable with doing this second half appropriation. One of our ongoing concerns as subcommittee members was the amount of reserve that they had and what was their ongoing plan. Because those reserves built up largely because they were getting county appropriation and not using it. And so it built quite a healthy reserve. And part of it pitched to their board, and they have their own board. They are in charge of their own selves, as they should be legally, was that we can't continue to build their reserve because that's taxpayer money and that's not a wise use of taxpayer money to build their reserve. We have an agreement with them that, because one of their concerns was if they get a big project going on one watershed, one plan, and as the fiscal agent, if bills are due and some money isn't flowing at the right time, that they would get a snag. We have an agreement with them that we will be their backstop. The county We'll use our own reserves to backstop them short-term for any really big projects that they have coming out of that large one watershed one plan grant. This is a partnership between Soil and Water and the county. But I will say it again and remind you, the state statute says we may help fund them. We may appropriate money to them. We don't have to, we may. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for regular accountability so we as a whole board see the work that's being done. I think that would be wise.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, can I add a couple things quick?
Yeah.
Just by means of quick reminder, so last year in the budget setting process, SWCD's appropriation was not originally included in the preliminary, was added and covered with additional funds at the last meeting. And under the exact premise of saying, we'd like to hear more about this or hear an annual report. So you're not unfound in your conclusions. You already stated that as we may need this as a precedent. So it's already on the table, should you choose to act in that fashion. Second, just wanted to point out a couple of quick resources because they fall into what you're talking about on the Waseca Soil and Water District. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's reports and plans. There are two sets of documents. They both are published at the same time. The fiscal year kind of creates an issue for us in the budget setting process, which has already been described. But so they publish these usually in the first quarter of the calendar year, their third quarter of operating year. And the work plan itself, plan of work, so this was published in March, highlights similar to what you're saying. Essentially, here are goals. And they'll specifically say, here's goal 1, here's goal 2. This is what we're striving to do in theory in this particular year. Okay. More relevant maybe to this is down here, the annual report, which speaks to a lot of what you're talking about. And I'm just going to actually skip all the way down to the bottom first, work backwards in terms of project accomplishments. So it's published within this document and captures essentially, here's everything we did this year. And then there's more detail behind it, to which we can go in reverse, as I stated. But in terms of the actual things that happen, where does the money go? What's it doing? This is it, essentially. So I'm not justifying the list one way or the other. I'm just saying this is what they would speak to in terms of what did you do in 2024? This is what they did in 2024. There's a section in here for one watershed, one plan as well. Doesn't really reach a conclusion in terms of projects. I guess I'd say there isn't a perfect tie to here's what happened in one watershed, one plan, and the dollars involved, and then being able to look at that project list and say, well, okay, that makes sense. So I would need some interpretive help there too, perhaps to best answer that question, because it is a significant amount of funding for one watershed, one plan, and we want to certainly make sure that we are maximizing the utilization of those dollars within Waseca County. That's, as Commissioner Walter stated, why we decided to take it on to begin with, in order to try to do that. So if that isn't happening, then we want to figure out why not and how do we make that happen. But I just wanted to at least point us to those resources out here, and they're historical in nature. You can go back a few years and look at that project listing, the budget itself too, for 2025. That's basis for approval 2026, and then on there, it's just a placeholder. But just wanted to point out those resources.
Okay, so how much money did they have when they ended their fiscal year?
Which fiscal year?
We went in June 30, 25, 45.
Off the top of my head, I have no idea. I have.
And that could be a good estimate.
It's not under that budget, but now let's see. I have a number I'm comfortable with telling you, but want to be misrepresenting anything. So whether or not I'll be able to find that exact number at this point in time or at this moment in time, suffice to say that the reserves that they have access to that we would call liquid, meaning they can access and utilize there and specifically beholden to a grant program, would cover that budget allocation request for several years.
Did they get the first half appropriation
Yes.
of the 30,168?
No. It was 60 total.
60 total. Okay, so 29 and some change. I would be interested to know if that. When did we mail out this, or when would they have received the first half?
July, second week of July.
Okay, so that their June 30th would have shown not their first half appropriation added to it. Okay.
Okay. All right, so all that said, we are looking for a motion to approve the second half appropriations for 20. Oh, did we already do that? Oh, that's right, we moved it into discussion. Okay. All right, you've got the motion and the second, Beth? And I will ask the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Can I, well, we can talk afterward if we need to have a work session or something, because we've got a couple of appropriations that we got discussion on for next year. All right, we will move on to, B. 2026 aquatic invasive species plan.
Good morning, a little lighter topic for you.
We'll see, yeah, we'll see.
Aquatic invasive species plan is just our annual review of the plan and annual acceptance of the plan as part of our obligation of participating in the program and our delegation agreement to receive funding. Kind of overall, our funding is based on number of accesses and trailer parking spaces throughout the county at our local lakes. 2026, we will receive $46,520, and our current account balance for the AIS is $190,000 and change. Overall, the plan hasn't really changed a whole lot. The main tool, I guess, we look at and use is the watercraft inspections on local lakes from May through September. Otherwise, our program is there's some radio ads and we did some table and event give out handouts at the local county fair, but watercraft inspections is the biggest portion of our plan. The only thing I will note, with the previous state budget and everything, there's been AIS was a hot topic of that. 2026 will receive our current funding is the normal funding, and then 2027 it will be cut in half as of now. There is a lot of push from the more northern counties and kind of private groups that have a ton of lakes and get a ton of funding, and then maybe have 2, 3, 4, 5 staff that have kind of taken on roles because of this funding. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more this year on where that's going, but as of right now, we will receive half in 2027.
So my question is, just looking at this 26 budget, you know, we're getting 46,000 and we're spending 80. So even with the regular amount of funding, 4 years, we wouldn't have a surplus.
Yeah. One thing to note with the current budget, 30,000 for reeds. That was part of one of their requests back in 2024. It was more or less supposed to be 30,000 over 3 years. 10 and 24, 10 last year and 10 and 26. And because of kind of some staff turnover at the state and some pushback from, fisheries office, they haven't been able to do their project in 24 or 25. And they still want to do the treatment. But it just hasn't happened. So we still have the money set aside for them, I guess earmarked. And we've told them like, yeah, it's still there, but I mean, if you don't do it in 26, we might have to kind of reassess what you're gonna do there, cause it's been 3 years now. Or going on 3 years. And then the electric dish barrier one too, had money in the budget in. I reached out to the local fisheries management last year. And I was like, are you gonna send us an invoice for that? Or, and we never got anything. He's like, no, we're not really doing anything with that now, but keep it in your budget for moving forward. We'd like to continue that partnership, but I haven't seen anything again this year. But I haven't reached out quite yet, but
So it's been in our budget.
it hasn't been being spent.
So that number that you have right now, that 190,000. Has that already been accounted for?
Yeah, that's what it's currently as.
That's not accounted for. It's not restricted funds. That's all free funds.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's just something that, yeah, if the state is gonna take away half the money, we gotta rethink how we.
Yeah, and me and Chris have been kind of talking about that. We think if they're gonna totally kind of cut in half the program, right now, watercraft inspections are like mandatory. You have to have it as part of your program. We think that will become more like optional, because I mean, if we cut it in half, won't even cover what we paid in watercraft inspectors last year. I guess kind of the idea I came up with, and I think bringing on board with it too, is if they cut that in half, we could look at maybe hiring a watercraft inspector or two, probably one, and then they could start in May, do inspections, and then once weed harvest ramps up, they could help us either run equipment or be onshore, unloading and offloading. And in the spare, like off time when they're waiting for another load to come in, they can inspect boats. And then once weed harvesting's done, they go back to inspecting boats. Cause it's always been the hangup of getting good seasonal staff, because we're like, hey, we don't really know when you're gonna start. It might be 2 weeks, it might be a month, and everybody wants a job for the whole summer. So this would kind of rate that. It's just,
It's an innovative way to look at it, yeah.
Just a thought, we have somebody that's out 24/7 a lot, and if you provide training to the sheriff's office staff, if they're going by a boat ramp or something, they have nothing else, pending, they could stop in and just kind of, hey, what's going on, check a couple boats out.
yeah, they'd have to go through, the DNR training and whatnot, but I think it's pretty simple just to get certified for that. But
If that's what, 5-6 hours?
I think so, yeah, half a day event kind of deal.
I mean, it might be worth, just if they're out, they can stop at Clear Lake, they sit there, either watch most of the time boats going anyway.
Yeah,
Inspect a fee.
Yeah, it just adds a little bit layer to you guys, a little bit more to help you out. But I'll make a motion, we accept the proposal.
I'll second it. I have a couple of.
It's been moved, seconded to approve the 2026 aquatic invasive species plan. Is there discussion?
Yes. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Milbrath for volunteering the sheriff. Volunteering the sheriff. Anyway, Brian, has St. Olaf asked for AIS or treatment down there?
they never have, so it's always been
Okay.
reeds or the Waseca Lakes Associated for Clear.
So Reed's will, and does the city cover Clear Lake? Or do we give some money for weed treatment in Clear?
We've given money, I guess they contribute money too, that it's always been pretty expensive, that they've always put funds forward too.
Yeah. And we're able to charge, we don't take anything out of the AIS for the weed harvester?
As of right now, no. It's,
You know, in the land and water resources budget, we have aquatic invasive species, we have feedlot monies that come in, we have natural resources block grant monies that come in. All of them are getting consolidated to offset staff costs. So you could say yes, you could say no. And then we have riparian dollars as well that come in and contribute and offset some of what would be some of the weed harvesting efforts. So it is truly a yes and a no. We don't have it allocated at that line item to say the AIS money is only going to this portion or the riparian is only going to this portion. We look at the full amount of the aid that we'll get in that year and say we're trying to capture every dollar of aid that'll come in to offset and lower the cost of the programs.
So is that what we're trying to do right now is the state's gonna put a stranglehold on this for we don't know how many years? Are we trying to have a balance in there not to exceed a certain amount, or what is anyone comfortable running this down to? Fair question? Or
It's a fair question and it's been an oft asked question. I'd say, we used close to $90,000 of the funds 3 years ago for that full Clear Lake Floridome treatment.
Yeah.
The Lakes Association pays some every year, raises funds to do spot treatments as well. We've seen a lot of success from the full lake application. We've also seen a significant reduction in the amount of weed harvesting that's happened. Could it all pop back up this next year? It could, but there's been a very steady decline. I mean, our weed harvesting season was a week and a half.
it's
This
kind of been an every other year thing so far. It's been a kind of a big year and then pretty much nothing here.
Yeah, so it's been hard to predict. We were expecting a bumper crop this year because no snow cover on the lake, unseasonably warm, and it just didn't happen. So hard to predict, obviously. There are counties, more northern counties as well, that get literally millions of AIS that are much dire situations than we are. So it's not a huge hurdle for us to overcome, but the things like Brian mentioned, as far as the statutory requirement currently to provide watercraft inspectors, as stated, we won't even have sufficient aid to do what we're statutorily told we have to do, which isn't necessarily different than about a dozen other places here in the county. But yeah, that is the hardest wishes.
I was going to respond to that we did lake assessments in St. Olaf. One was done late in the season and then we had them come out early in the season, the same as what they do at Clear Lake for telling us where we can harvest stuff. And there is a little bit of pond leaf in St. Olaf, but minimal. And not enough to where I don't even know that we could get a permit from the DNR to treat, because there's too many natives that are benefiting the lake and they don't want those disturbed. So there has been quite a bit of talk about that too, but as of now, St. Olaf is pretty good shape. You guys had more questions?
My question, Michael, or Brian, maybe you know this. When did the state put that as a mandate? And I go back to my years.
It was like 2020 or 2016, 2015 or 2016, I believe.
Did that fall upon the sheriff at that time prior to that to be an inspection person?
No.
Okay, because the sheriff's in charge of, lakes and such. And I always thought that fell somewhat into that category as well. I'm just curious if that's when it went.
I don't believe so, I guess, but I think 2015, 2016 is when kind of the whole AIS program took off.
I think the deal that pushed it out to the question.
Question, comment, Reed's Lake has been working on this for a couple of years and had another meeting, and I don't know if we've heard anything back with the.
So Chris was at the Lakes Associated meeting or called one of the board members about 2 weeks ago now, and they were still at that time gonna try and do it this fall.
Okay.
I mean, the lake's froze over now. We haven't heard anything, so I don't believe that anything's been done this fall. But they said they're still trying to push forward with it. They're just getting some pushback with local fisheries want more say in chemical treatment on lakes, just for fish habitat. And that's where they're kind of getting the pushback.
I was here for the public meeting for that, and it was very interesting, and they had comments from on the fishery side, both about Reed's Lake and possible consequences, and also about what they viewed the end result of the treatment on Clear Lake was, and whether that was good, bad, or indifferent. I think that's the first meeting I've ever been at where they had folks from the same state agency taking two different sides of the argument, which was like not helpful to bring consensus in the room, but I mean, they obviously have experts on both sides of the issue there, but it was weird. Ultimately, it comes down to what do we have to do, and is there a way to do this more efficiently or with within our little scope of how we're doing it. I appreciate both staff using some thoughtfulness to say, oh, we could be a little more efficient this way. I appreciate board members here and other county electeds being willing to look at other possible solutions, because in our little corner world, sometimes that's what we have to do. And so I'll be interested to see how those discussions come along. But this is good work putting this report together. We need to get it in so we can get funding, and let's do that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve resolution 2025-47, which is the aquatic invasive species plan. There's no more discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That was a simple one. All right, now we have resolution 2025-48. City of Waseca TA grant application.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
This resolution, essentially if adopted, would show county support for the city's application for transportation alternative funding, which is a federal pot of money for pedestrian, bicycle, non-motorized recreational type infrastructure. And they are targeting a 2030 mill and overlay project on the trail around Clear Lake here in Waseca. The city council tonight will be considering a similar resolution for the application as well. I think they are seeking approximately $600,000 in TA funds for a $750,000 project, so 80% federal funding, 20% local match is kind of what they're targeting on that application. So again, just really county support because the trail is primarily in county highway right of way, and would be a requirement of the grant application to have that support of the county.
But we're not obligating to part of that 20%.
No, sir.
All right, I would look for a motion to approve resolution 2025-48.
Make that motion.
Second,
A second, Milter.
moved by Commissioner Mills, second by Commissioner Walter, to approve resolution 2025-48, which supports the city of Waseca transportation alternatives grant application. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
One more to go.
Yeah, okay, you're up for the resolution 2025-49 PLSS policy.
And thank you. I really hope, you all had an opportunity to read this packet. I was trying to figure out a way to introduce this without going back to like 1795. But essentially, this policy provides a reimbursement program for, to eliminate the financial burden, I guess, of private folks doing land surveys and having to find these section corners, which are public infrastructure, and have public benefit out there. So again, this is really just, it's a reimbursement program to keep that effort going of remonumenting the county's section corners and which we started here a couple of years ago, really got off to a good start with a state grant, for the remonumentation of Wilton Township. And unfortunately, that state grant hasn't been reappropriated or no additional funds reappropriated, so it's not guaranteed. And folks that are doing land splits or having the need to do surveys out in the country or even in the town perhaps are having to pay that cost to go in and find these corners and certify them through their survey process. And really it's a public cost. That's what this policy sort of set up to mitigate.
So do you, how is that?
Ask away.
How are you reimbursing? I mean, you're not reimbursing 100%. Are you reimbursing a certain amount of cost of the recording?
So what we would do is, once policy's in place and there is some monies established in the 2026 budget to get this off the ground, then the amount of the reimbursement would be established in your fee schedule that you would adopt at a later date. And that right now is a recommendation from a land surveyor in the industry of $2,000 per corner. It's kind of the cost of all, researching all the history on that section corner of preparing a new certificate and recording it. That would be like the public cost of a private survey. So that would be my recommendation for when you entertain the 2026 schedule.
Okay. This is just to get the ball rolling.
Yep, this would be all set up. Correct.
So it's essentially, you could be looking at it as reimbursing the administrative costs that are beneficial to the county system as a whole and to public data as a whole. The cost may exceed $2,000 and likely will. The cost of digging, etc. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that every additional section corner that is registered and certified helps the next one and helps the county system as a whole. So that's really what this is seeking to do, is reimburse the administrative cost to the individuals that are doing their private land surveys, because it ultimately has a significant public benefit as well.
Right. So a person had a survey, it cost $6,500 and they found 2 points that they could record, then we would reimburse $4,000 approximately.
Yeah, but then there's some requirements for them to get that reimbursement. Should establish in the policy, but pretty straightforward, generally. And then the benefit of having it in your fee schedule is, as costs go up, the county board can reevaluate the reimbursement amount, on an annual basis. So maybe it's $3,000 in a couple of years, and that's the going rate.
Okay. And you guys landed on 75,000 with, did that take some research as far as how many surveys in the county generally are done in a year?
I think, that came out of a discussion at Public Works Subcommittee.
Okay.
No, it's a start.
It's a start.
Recommendation.
Yeah, it's a start. I would imagine. Okay. Excellent. All right. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, did I?
Yes.
Motion? Okay. So I will call the question on resolution 2025-49.
We go right on. Oh, hang on. I told you wrong. I told you wrong. It's my mistake. I'm thinking of the last one.
Yeah,
I know who's gonna move this already, so.
Let's be.
Are you looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a motion.
I motion by Crosby to approve this one.
Is there a second?
There is.
Thank you.
By Commissioner Crowley, second by Commissioner Walter,
Just will be good.
approve resolution 2025-49. Public land survey system remonumentation policy. Any other discussion?
I would just say one thing. Some of you were in on the AMC did a lunch and learn on this, and I have a link to it if anybody's interested in that. They do a good job of helping explain without going back to, 18 whatever, before statehood, what all happened and why we are where we are. And obviously, in many of the urban counties, this isn't an issue because they built so many things that they know where everything is. Out here in rural places, we don't necessarily, and I think this is a great step forward to help us, help our property owners, and also help our property owners, help us to have a better digital footprint of our county. So if anybody's interested in the link, let me know, because it's an interesting thing to listen to.
And that's why we started in Wilton Township, because it goes to county seat.
There you go.
Right.
Okay. There's no other discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Jim. I think that's it for you. Let's take a 5-minute break. Get back here at 11:05.
It came down from the Vietnam.
I'll just set it here. Okay. I'll set all those nice and then end up calculating.
Yeah, I got two big. Out of the bowl.
So she looked over here too.
She was pretty impressed.
All right, I think we're all here. So Melissa, we will go on to resolution 2025-50, establishing 26 wage increase for non-union employees.
Good day, Commissioners. This is something that I bring to you every year at this time. It is the approving for the 2026 wages for non-union employees. The adjustments to the salaries, it mirrors the 4 bargaining agreements that we have currently in place, with the 3% on January 1st, 2% in July 1st, and then also adjusting our classification compensation plan by 3% as well. Unless there's any questions regarding this, I would look for approval.
I would look for a question. If they're at their max of pay grade, do they still get the 2% COLA?
They do not. They'll get the 3%, the general increase in the beginning of the year, but they do not receive the 2%.
The 3% is considered the COLA, right?
Correct.
Okay,
2% is your,
the 3, I apologize, 3%.
Yep.
Okay.
yeah.
Even though they're at their max of they still get the 3%.
Correct, because we've moved the plan, the salaries ranges by 3%, they will receive that 3%.
Are there many employees that are at that top level right now? I think off that, you're just rendering.
We do have a few,
Okay.
absolutely. I know what the highway definitely does.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll make that a motion.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Moved by Commissioner Milbrook, second by Commissioner Hargit, to approve resolution 2025-50. Wage increases for non-union employees. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right,
You got the next one too, I believe.
we do have the next one. So
Resolution 2025-51. Approval, updated personnel policies and new Minnesota paid leave policy.
Great. So, as the board is maybe aware, I have been working diligently on updating all of our policies this whole year. So, I know the last board meeting, we brought some administration policies to you. This is the next step of bringing some personnel policies to you, as well as the new policy. It's the only new one that is being brought to you today, is the Minnesota paid leave. This policy does comply with the January 1st, 2026 implementation of the state's plan of paid leave. We are not going with the state's plan, like their plan. We are doing our private. We're going with Hartford. But this policy does just outlines, to comply. So that state.
So there's because these acronyms seem to change on me. This is the same as the PFML.
Correct. So I've seen in other counties too, and I decided to write it this way, the MNPL policy, because it helps separate from the FMLA so that employees don't get confused the PFMLA or the FMLA. So by using this acronym, it kind of separates it a little bit easier.
Okay.
But yes, it is the same.
Yeah, it can get confusing and you get them interchanged and stuff, yeah. I need one more program.
Right.
Okay, if everyone's had a chance to look through the new policy, I would Look for a motion to approve resolution 2025-51.
I'll go with discussion.
And I would make a second on that.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Argid, second by Commissioner Malter to approve resolution 2025-51. Is there discussion?
My one, and I'm going back to maybe not, I guess the whole policy that's put into place here under the recruitment. I didn't get it.
145. Oh, which one are you looking at?
How long is somebody on probation?
6 months.
6 months, okay. On the one that we have for hiring somebody back,
Page 145. Reinstatement.
the reinstatement one,
Or reappointment.
instead of a year, should we put that at 6 months? And it's kind of a probation, I mean. I recall, I think we had one that in the, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna be like D, back in my day, as the sheriff. We hired somebody back that had left, but they were back within a certain period of time. And I think it was within 4 or 5 months that they came back. And I'm just thinking 1 year could be a little bit too far out to give them that credit.
Yeah.
What discussion?
Was this based on public sector, private sector? A lot of them are 30 days.
This
Pretty
is,
short time period.
this is public sector. I did utilize PDA as a
Yeah.
resource with the templates.
And they were all out about a year.
I'm trying to see, reading a year.
Within 1 year of separate.
Former employees rehired after more than 1 year.
Well, if you go to reinstatement.
As opposed to reemployment.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 'cause it's not-
Reinstatement, yeah.
They're not necessarily having a year of probation. It's just separating them.
No, I'm just
Well, they get the
going by,
credit for the prior service, pay benefits probation. They would receive that. If they come back to us within the year, they'll receive that service credit.
and I'm thinking that should be 6 months, because that's a probation period of time.
I see what you're saying.
Instead of a year, they only get 6 months in order to get all that back.
Okay.
Well, if an employee goes to the past year, they usually know within 30, 60, 90. I could go out 3 months. I think 6 months is generous. If they made a mistake or not to come back. I mean, a whole year to say, well, I've got a year to figure this out and then come back and expect to start right where you left off. With pay. Your PTO, everything is just the same. That's like a hiatus.
Very good point. You can make that change. That's
Correct.
So a couple of questions. Reinstatement would only happen if we had an opening.
correct. We would have
That, like, we've got another opening. And, or if it was never filled. I get what you're saying, but the fact is, particularly in some of the jobs we have, having somebody who might be interested in coming back even up to a year later, that knows the county and has some expertise in a certain area that we don't have to retrain. I'm just thinking about what it costs to train people. And if we're reinstating somebody, we have an opening that we're filling and we can decide to, because they're gonna come in and go through the same process, correct me if I'm wrong, that every other applicant is gonna go through, and we get to decide whether they're a good fit or not. And whether a reinstatement is to our benefit or not. This isn't, oh, you get to come back regardless. You still have to go through the process.
But is that process still, I mean, are they gonna fill an application, go through the interviews, and the whole bit, or is it just, we know you get to come back? I think that,
I'm assuming there's,
We would have
there's
to do the recruitment process.
that there's
Something
something
we
standard recruitment, or we're not doing
Yeah.
our recruitment fairly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm assuming.
It just says with approval from the department head and HR director. There's nothing about reappointing.
This is reinstatement for benefits. and only benefits consideration. This is a reinstatement to your job.
Okay,
So there's a significant difference in this. This isn't an uncommon recruitment piece
Okay.
where it's more of a struggle maybe for us to apply at the county level is just the diversity and the breadth of the jobs we're talking about. This is really, really common in more technically oriented jobs across the globe. So this is only a recruitment piece as I view it. It is part of that recruitment retention package that we say, maybe somebody did think they had a better opportunity elsewhere, whatever the situation may be. In most cases, we still don't want to eliminate them as a possible rehire when we know they have subject matter expertise relative to this organization specifically. This has nothing to do with our ability to circumvent or bypass a job advertisement process and the interview process. That all of that still has to happen. So they would still have to reapply, they would still have to be interviewed, they would still be subject potentially to a probation period again after the fact. That only says that you may still benefit from, maybe you cross the threshold of PTO accrual from 4 years into 5 years. You don't have to go back to 0. You get to start back at that 5 years of accrual.
Do they get that full accrual on day one of hire, or do we wait till they're on probation? to get that?
You start accruing first day.
No, I mean,
It would be day one, yes.
it would be day one.
Yes.
Well, they don't get when they left the organization, whatever PTO they had, that's gone.
No, yes, it's not as though they're getting a block of time, it is the rate at which they are accruing.
Right.
But that rate would be effective their day of hire, yes. So open to tweaking it. I mean, it's good feedback one way or the other. I just want to clarify that it isn't changing anything as far as our current recruitment practice. It's another tool in the tool belt of our recruitment practice to be able to try to attract previous employees, because there are previous employees that we do want to come back and would take back if possible. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. And if we have another opportunity to cast that net and say, we're not gonna, so to speak, penalize you. You're not gonna have to reset at the bottom if we're able to bring you back. And this opening opens up.
So wouldn't you have to, you would want that reinstatement period the same as your reemployment period? If you change reemployment to 6 month separation, wouldn't you want to do that with reinstatement also?
Yeah, they would have to model each other.
Yeah, you would want them to model each other. The only advantage, or one of the advantages, I should say, of shortening that time frame to make a person think longer and harder about leaving, is they're not going to have that as much grace, basically.
Yeah, so there's the employee perspective and there's the employer perspective. I'm talking about from the employer perspective. In a sense, for a second, I don't necessarily care what the employee's thinking. I want to be able to recruit the best possible candidate from the employer perspective. So if it's been 9 months, somebody has taken another job, we have an open that maybe a more technically oriented, like an appraiser in the assessor's office. We have the ability to contact somebody. Are you sure? Maybe you want to reconsider this position. And oh, by the way, that even if the position has changed in some way, shape, or form, we still have the ability to say that, hey, we think you'd fit really well here. And by the way, we can reinstate your previous accrual and benefits exactly as if you were here the whole time. So that's the employer benefit. And I'm not looking at that. It's the employee.
Perhaps maybe some of the paid family medical leave would cover 3 months of that if they want to grab a different job. And then figure out they wanted to come back.
They could triple dip.
No comment.
I'm done. So I guess the question is, if we want to do any adjusting here? Or-
So one other thing I forgot to mention, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Typically, we communicate to candidates as well that we can keep their application on file for a year.
Correct.
That also models that. So that's the other side of this as well from the employer standpoint. So we communicate that even if we don't hire you and you wanted this job, we have the ability to reach out to you and hire you for a year after the fact. So they all just kind of blend to that same or follow that same timeline.
I'm just wondering, do we need to have should they be separated out, the staffing and employment practices, the benefits and leaves, code of conducts, and then Minnesota paid leave, can those be separate resolutions? I'm just curious, and I don't like the Minnesota paid leave. I don't want to vote no on that. The rest of it looks good.
Gotcha.
This is getting shoved down our throat. It's gonna hurt every business in Minnesota. And I'm against it. And I want to vote no on it. But I like how we've discussed the rest of it. I think it all looks okay.
Well, I will say, I mean, that is a policy we have to have in place. I have my first claim is gonna be January 2nd.
I understand it's mandated by the state. I understand that. I'm uncomfortable with it because it's gonna hurt the whole community and the whole town.
If you have 3 commissioners that vote against it, it's still mandated.
I know, but so is everything else that gets shoved down our throats sometimes from the state.
And I agree, it's such a complicated law right now. Trying to navigate that along with the FMLAs and it is an administrative burden right now. It's gonna be, I'm not looking forward to.
It's gonna be a burden upon everybody working, because there's gonna be individuals that are gonna play that card and they're gonna not work maybe 2 months out of a year when you actually leave them.
Yeah, so part of the reason we went with a private firm, the Hartford, opposed to the state program is because it is highly likely that the rate is going to triple by next year, if not more. So the rate lock that we have as part of that 2-year arrangement insulates us from whatever adjustment happens. And we all know that that rate is going to go up and go up significantly. And we all know that it's going to create a significant burden on employers 3 months into the year, if not before. So we're literally already hearing about people scheduling things in January that they may have otherwise done in December, because the thought process is now shifted where we really want to get this procedure done by the end of the year. Now let's wait till next year. And you can't really fault them for that mindset, because it's there and it's viable, it's legal, and yeah, we don't have the option to say no. So where we all agree with that sentiment, we also don't have the ability to not have a policy surrounding it as well. So to your question, we could separate it. Yes, we would just have to do that at a different meeting. And of all of them on that list, the paid family is probably the most important because it has to be in place by January. So we would, if that was more of a comfort for the commissioners, we would want to remove all of the other policies from the resolution and move those to a different resolution at a different meeting.
No, it's been moved and which. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor of resolution 2025-51, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Me,
Commissioner Morgan,
No.
Commissioner Milbrook,
no,
Commissioner Crosby,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
and Commissioner Christopherson.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No reflection on your work, dear.
No.
Very good work.
I don't need that.
We don't agree on that. So
No. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay. Let's go down here. We will be looking at resolution 2025-52, approval of settlement agreement relating to Steele County's withdrawal from Minn Prairie County Alliance.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be as concise as I can. If you need some additional details or information, just let me know. County attorney's been very involved in this conversation as well too. Sarah's also here. You really want to put her on the spot for anything. I'm sure she'd love that. But long story short, for the last several months, we've been in conversation, and you could use the word negotiation with Steele County and Dodge County after Steele made it very abundantly clear that they wanted to separate the relationship with Minn Prairie and the joint powers agreement that they are a part of. And then specifically under a different subset of terms as outlined in the joint powers agreement. So in order to eventually effectuate the best path of separation and unwinding, we have to go with the Prairie staff and the two counties, Waseca and Dodge, that wanted to remain in that relationship as part of Minn Prairie. The determination was made by the Joint Powers Board and the commissioner sitting on that to facilitate conversation, negotiation between the three counties using a smaller subset of staff and county attorneys to try to come to an arrangement that was ultimately palatable and could be agreed upon all three counties. That is what brings us to today. Last Tuesday, the Steele County Board of Commissioners by resolution formally withdrew. That was resolution 2025-15, I think, something like that. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But ultimately, they formally withdrew. I have it in the body of the resolution itself, which was a requirement as part of that negotiation or settlement agreement, and all of that is within the packet. But Waseca and Dodge County Commissioners were still adamant that Steele County took the first step by withdrawing, which they did pursuant to the agreement, and also highlighting all of the other pertinent points within that settlement agreement before the other two individual boards, Dodge and Waseca County, would reciprocate with their own action to uphold that settlement agreement. That is what brings us here today. That was the very concise, consolidated version of the last 12 some months of conversation. Rachel, anything you want to add?
Can I just add a couple of quick things? Just because I want to make sure it's completely clear that in the resolution, can we just add the word Steele County resolution? Just because I think it will get rid of any ambiguity or question about when it says that Steele County formally withdrew from Minn Prairie the passage of resolution number. Obviously, it's their resolution number,
Sure.
not ours. I just want to make it abundantly clear. So it'd be their 017 and the 056. So I just wanted to add the word Steele to that before you actually sign this.
Where are you at?
I'm on page 166 of your board packet.
Okay.
So on the screen, Mr. Chair, wanting to clarify that these are both Steele County resolution numbers.
Yeah. So, which I assume everyone knows, but I also just, again, abundantly clear that if anyone, it's beyond us. At some point, someone goes and wants to look this up, and they know, oh, if I want to look at that resolution, I have to go to Steele County.
Yep.
And then just to also be clear that when you make your motion, if you're going to approve this to sign, that obviously Michael's the one that is being directed to execute and distribute, but also it's signed by the board chair. So any motion would be directing the board chair and Michael's. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So resolution 2025-52, our resolution to accept this withdrawal is my signature and Beth's.
Correct. But then the settlement agreement is yours and Michael's.
Okay. So we want that as two separate motions? Or is it all?
No, I think it's all in, I'm just saying you're approving resolution and the motion to accept this resolution and move forward with the settlement agreement means that they're authorizing you and Michael to sign the settlement agreement and then Michael being directed to distribute it.
But by passing the resolution, you're accepting the settlement.
The settlement agreement, yeah, correct.
Yep, so ultimately, staff are looking for approval of resolution 2025-52 with the amendments as proposed by the county attorney, and I will then print those off momentarily after the fact and have you review and sign.
Okay, so I would look for a motion to approve resolution 2025-52 with the amendments.
I would make a motion for resolution 2025-52 with the amendments and with the authorization to the chair and staff to proceed with the settlement agreement.
There's a second.
There's a second by Krause.
Moved by Commissioner Malter, second by Commissioner Krause. Discussion.
I'm just questioning Dodge County on board with doing the same resolution.
Correct. Yes, they have it. They asked me again this morning for another copy of it. So I sent them both the Word version and the executed signed copy by Steele. They've already executed their copy.
Okay, so I'll go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Commissioner Christopherson for heading this up for so long. And the numerous meetings, and Commissioner Malter, you also, and to Tara also for being in this predicament that you guys have been in for a while, so.
Yeah, this will bring some, what's the word, finalization. So we can move forward with how this separation will look, because it's been many months of not really knowing what the timeline's gonna be. I guess what I wanted to say was, we questioned ourselves many times throughout this period whether we should veer from the joint powers agreement at all. We have an agreement in place. This is part of the reason that when we were looking at it several years ago, we didn't want to go through withdrawal because it was cumbersome to go through it. And so, why would we now make an exception? And it's not really an exception. It's still, in my mind, financially very similar to how our joint powers agreement is worded. The only thing that we really veered off of was the timeline and voting rights that were significant. We're still allowing them to have voting rights for this next year. Part of the reason is it doesn't really matter because the four of us, as long as we're Dodge and Waseca is unanimous on any topic, we can pass what we feel is good for the organization going forward. The timeline, it would be very cumbersome for our organization to continue to go through this for 3 years. It would be difficult to maintain staff, a good working environment for staff. So, the timeline, I felt like, it's not a good partnership right now. So we want to move on so that Dodge and us can reorganize and get a good organization going forward again. So not that it hasn't been. That's probably been the most frustrating thing for the other two counties, as we felt like we did a lot of good things in the last 3 to 5 years. And anyway, that is why we did negotiate and we come to this end product. Go ahead.
I want to echo Commissioner Hargis' thanks to Chair Christopherson because he's immediate past chair of Mid Prairie, and so the last 3 years actually he chaired over there, and And we went through a lot of changes there with Dodge County having some looking for some adjustments to funding and funding formulas and and provided great leadership. It's been helpful that Commissioner Chosas from Dodd is the current chair, and he's leading well through this time of transition and will be chair again next year. So that gives us some consistency in leadership by people who are committed to the organization and committed to staying with the organization and making it successful. And Tara's done a great job of stepping in as the executive director after Jane's leave of absence. And this is a chance. We can either view this as a very negative thing, or we can say we've got a chance here to reimagine again what this looks like between two counties who are committed to doing the work together effectively, efficiently, and within our means, and caring for our own local people. And we have a lot in common with Dodge County. Thanks to Commissioner Christopherson and Michael and Rachel and Tara and all the folks who have had a hand in getting us to this point, because it has not been good for Min Prairie to be hanging out there and not knowing where this was going to go. It is good that we know where we're going. This will give us the opportunity on that JPA board to make decisions in the coming few months that will benefit Waseca and Dodge County in the ongoing organization. And we want to do that. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just clarify the amendments and make sure we're comfortable with them. So the inclusion of Steele County in both of these lines, clarifying the resolution, and adding the Waseca County Board Chair as part of the authorizing party to the settlement agreement as well. So you know what you're.
It's agreeable to the motion,
Thank you. Second.
Second is target.
Second. Amendments are correct. No.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Are you okay with the amendment?
Yes, it's written up there. I'm fine. It says.
Oh, we're a good team.
Okay, no other discussion. I will call the question. All in favor of resolution 2025-52? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Aye. Yeah. Roll call?
Commissioner Morgan,
No.
Commissioner Commissioner Milbright,
Yes.
Commissioner Housie,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
and Commissioner Christopherson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
All right. That does it for action items today. We'll move on to administration.
Nothing terribly pressing unless you have any particular questions for me, Mr. Chair. We have AMC annual conference at the beginning of next week. I'm sure things I'm thinking through, looking for insight on towards the end of the year continue to be shotgun zones. I'm sure you'll have opportunity to have a lot of good conversation next week with other commissioners. Something that just keeps changing in terms of people's feeling or approach on it. So I hope you're able to get some more clarity on that as well. As I know other people will also be looking for some more clarity and continuity of that decision-making process in our district and in our region. But apart from that, if you have anything else for me, I'm happy to address it.
There was some discussion possibly sometime in the first couple months of the year to get a DNR representative in here to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Any questions for Michael or any other topics that you'd like an update on? Is it, everyone is going up? Any topics? All right, well, then if there's no other questions for Michael, we'll move on to HR announcements. Is there anything special or we can read it ourselves?
If you'd like me to go over, I mean, I think one thing I could point out is the 2 resignations that we have there are 2 part-time dispatchers. And so instead of hiring 2 part-time, we're just hiring 1 full-time, which will help with scheduling.
For those planned resignations or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I knew we were gonna remodel that.
That's exactly what it is. It's that remodeling of the staffing. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Melissa? Don't have anyone here in the room, I don't think, that has a anniversary. And I would look, well, we got, she left, Tina. She'll probably email us her updates. Okay. All right, then if we want, do we have time for commissioner reports? Just we'll go through them. Commissioner Mildred, if you want to start?
Yeah. We go back to November 18th, our board meeting. On Wednesday, the 19th, I had EDA. We had our legislative luncheon. I had a joint AMC meeting. I had a Waseca Area Foundation meeting. And I attended the Janesville Foundation Awards in Janesville that evening. On the 20th, I had a RAC meeting, EMSA meeting, and a green seam out at Farm America. On the 22nd, I had coffee with the commissioner, and we did, I delivered neighborhood center basket delivery for people. And then we had Thanksgiving week. I didn't have much going on except for coffee with the commissioner on the 29th. Last night, Commissioner Krause and myself attended the University Extension. And today we had work session and board meeting. And just to add a couple things, Thursday night, Neighborhood Service Center is having an open house from 4 to 6. And at 6, there is the lighting of the lights downtown, which starts at 6 at the Arts Council.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hargett.
18th was 9:30 board, 1 p.m. I met in Michael's office, 7 p.m. Fair board annual meeting. 19th, 11 a.m. was the legislative luncheon. Did not make it back for green theme. The 24th, I met Chris Howard down at Solid Waste to look at some water issues. That's pushing water back on the neighbor. Brings me to this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Krause.
The 19th was our, at 7:45 in the morning, I met with Jim out at Highway. Then at 8:30, economic development. And then from 11 to 1 was our legislative day with our representatives. Thursday the 20th, went to the Green Seam event out of Farm America. It was really good. Then on the 24th, we had HRC. I was unable to make it that day, but I do believe Commissioner Christopherson was there. And then, last evening, Mr. Commissioner Belgrath and I were at Extension at 4:30. Brings us to today. I was just wondering if was anybody going to FCI tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. besides?
I was planning on.
Okay,
I'm planning on it.
good.
Start fasting now. So,
So you can take full advantage of that. Those biscuits and gravy are so good.
they have such food out there.
Yeah, they do.
It's always nice to have at least two out there, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Malter.
Yeah, on the 18th, we had a labor committee meeting before our board meeting and then meeting in Michael's office to talk about the building committee, the Justice Center building. And look at that. And a Minco Joint Powers Board meeting at 3 p.m. On the 19th, legislative delegate luncheon at 11 on the 20th. I left and went someplace warm with my daughter-in-law for a few days, which was awesome. Took my turkey out to thaw on Monday. That was a good important thing. Tuesday, the 25th, Waseca County Collaborative for Families with a meeting in the morning. And then I think I stopped and talked to Michael for just a few minutes. Wednesday, the 26th. Was cooking at home, and Thursday, Friday, obviously cooking at home. Yesterday, what did I do yesterday? Yesterday, I was over in Owatonna with the South Country Health Alliance Legislative Luncheon. And another good chance to visit with legislators and yeah, another good lunch. Baked potato bar. Get fed good this time of the year. And here we are today.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so a lot of this will be repetitive, but on the 18th, we had, after our board meeting, we had in Prairie, Jim Powers. 19th was the legislative luncheon. And on the 20th, Green Scene out at Farm America. 24th, then I did have Sparrow meeting at 4:00. 25th, just nothing county related. 26th, Wednesday, met with the new administrator of Richland and Chris Howard and Michael was there at Chris's office, and we kind of gave him the history of Richland as far as the water issues and where we're at today, and trying to get to a solution for that. So we just wanted to give him some of the history and things to ponder. So that went good. I think they've got a good administrator there. Hopefully it works out for the town. Then I also had a South Country Health Alliance Zoom meeting with Leota for our meeting this Thursday. Yeah. And then we had Thanksgiving weekend. Yesterday I had a in Prairie policy Zoom meeting, and then was with Dee over in Owatonna at the South Country Health Alliance legislative visit. That was good. It's always the karma and some of this CVP stuff isn't always on the forefront of legislators. Or they don't get the backstory or what it's actually doing for our communities. So that's always good to have the legislators there. We had legislators from not just our, well, they touched the other areas, Dodge. There was 2 or 3 others there, so that was good. Also, one other thing, back on the 26th, I did have to go back over to Sparrow and assist with staff to kind of help Mitch with the staff situation over there. So that was uncomfortable for me, but I needed to be there to support Mitch and the staff, so the board. So it all went well. All right, that's it for commissioner reports. I would look for, if there's nothing else, no other questions, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Malter,
Is there a second?
we all just want to stay.
Second by Crowley.
I was gonna say, you can dismiss us by power of the chair.
You all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
So tricky.